Is Representative Wright here? Okay. We will take up HB 10 by Representative Wright. All right, Ms. Pryor.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 10 by Representative Wright provides for the rate of the state sales and use tax and provides for the exemptions, exclusions, credits, and rebates claimed against sales and use taxes.
Representative Wright on your bill.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Members, appreciate the opportunity to bring this bill on sales tax as part of this broad plan. You know, for the record, I was here when we brought in the temporary 0.45 at the time, and I was fairly new for that matter. At the time, there really wasn't much of a choice. It was either go with it or not. And I know some people made decisions one way and not the other. The point of it is that now we've reached that timing where it either goes away or we move forward. And I think the governor and Secretary Nelson and others' idea is that we're probably much better off by going after our income tax. I agree with that. And using the 0.45 permanently, at least for a period of time, to pay our bills, right? And so what we've done here, besides the exemptions and exclusions and aligning the bases, we also have some amendments which we will, Madam Chair, we can address when you're ready to go. But we're going to ask to change it to 0.40 in one of the amendments. So it won't be 0.45, it'll be 0.40. And then we have other amendments related to issues that we've discussed, and I know members of the committee have discussed. So I'll just stop right there and let you tell me how to go, where you want to go.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take up the amendments. Ms. Pryor, do you want to go through them? There we go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendments are being distributed right now. They are also available on the internet. The identification number is number 99 in the upper right-hand corner. This is a set of 21 amendments. I'm not going to go through them individually, but in, just an overview, this set of amendments, we are reducing the amount of the state sales tax levied in 321.1 from 0.45% to 0.40%. We are going to address the issue of the mandatory exemption to locals for prescription drugs. Specifically, if you look at amendment numbers 11, 12, and 13, what we're going to do is we are segregating the state taxes and the local taxes for purposes of this exemption only, and allow the locals to continue to tax things that are taxable now until June 30th, 2025, and then beginning July 1, 2025, the entire section that deals with the exemption on medical devices and drugs will be subject to state and local sales tax exemptions. Amendment number 14 is reinstating the exemption for purchases by regionally accredited independent institutions of higher education, which are members of the Louisiana Association of Independent Colleges and Universities, if the purchases are directly related to the educational mission of the institution. We are retaining the exemption that is in place now in current law for credit unions. We are also going to reinstate the exemption for purchases or for sales or purchases by councils on aging. And finally, the last amendment that I'll kind of summarize is we're retaining the exemption for sales of butane, propane, or other liquefied petroleum gases for private residential consumption. And we're going to make that, instead of an exemption, we're going to make it, instead of an exclusion, we're going to make it an exemption. And we are making it applicable to the 321.1 levy, because in current law, it is not subject to, it is currently paying the tax on that levy, so we're going to make it exempt for all of the sales tax levies.
All right, thank you. Representative Wright, did you want to make any comments on the amendment?
So, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make it real quick here. I mean, obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're changing it from .45 to .40. We've got a number of other issues that we've attempted to address. I know there was one question about residential propane deliveries. We realized there was something that needed to be fixed on it. That's part of the amendment. We also have something related to independent educational institutions. And then we also did some work on some amendments related to Council of Aging, banking, and credit unions. So frankly, it's a 100-plus page bill, so I'm happy to discuss anything, but it's probably better to just go questions to me than me trying to paint the full picture.
All right, we do have a few questions, so I think you'll be able to go back and forth on it. Representative Eccles.
Thank you. Just to reiterate, and I actually ran a cleanup language on a similar taxing bill a couple of years ago, but on page 2 of 4, Amendment 14, as it relates to the purchase lease of intangible property serviced by a regionally accredited independent institution of higher education. One of my med schools is a nationally accredited, and I just want to make sure, because we cleaned it up in law one time before at the state, this is just old language, just to make sure the intent is still to capture both the regionally and nationally accredited educational institutions.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no intent to exclude based on that designation. That is language I work with LICU and the independent institutions.
Okay, so we'll work on that, I guess, between here and the floor on that,
Absolutely.
or however you want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Brass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Representative Wright. So if we could refer to page 2 of 4, where you're actually reducing the rate from .45 to .40. So I think the department mentioned throughout this process that we was going to be about $100 million short collectively when we look at the package as in its entirety. So the fiscal note that I'm still seeing online in hand actually illustrates the amount or the cost associated with the .45. So with reducing the rate, what amount in dollars are we looking to, I guess, as far as a reduction?
Well, so I can't say definitively, okay, but in talking with people who have been analyzing this, it's not significant enough to not change, is the point. But we'll have to get a fiscal note at some point on the exact amount. But it just wasn't enough that would affect any major decisions.
Okay, and then looking at the package holistically again, I guess from a department standpoint, as a result of the revenues that would have been generated through the, I guess, the .45. You know, what's the administration perspective with trying to recoup that, whatever that number is, in addition to the $100 million?
Yeah. So, Rep. Brass, basically the balance of all the changes of the bills that come out of the committee. I mean, we have to balance those with the income tax or the corporate income tax bills to make sure that those all balance out, so that we don't create a greater deficit than we would have anticipated. So. I think that the .05 was worth probably about $50 million. So we'll have to balance that out with all the other changes and find out where we are.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Willard.
Yeah, Rep. Brass was kind of touching on what I wanted to touch on. All right, so you say we have to balance it out with the changes to the income tax bills. So if you're an extra 50, I mean, it sounds like the $100 million you're comfortable with, you would cut spending in certain areas, and that would balance out. But now you have an additional $50 million, possibly with going to .4 instead of .45. Are you expecting to cut spending by another $50 million? Are we expecting to increase tax rates? If so, would that occur on the personal or the corporate side?
So on the personal income tax bill, that's really where most of these sales changes are encompassed, right? The corporate income tax rate is really not impacted by the sales tax rate, because that's not, the money doesn't go from there to there, right? Because the corporate income is really going to the Revenue Stabilization Fund currently. So in reality, what we're going to do is just have to sum up all of the changes. $50 million is $50 million, that's true. But like all of every exemption and every change we make, any changes that happens to the services bill between now and, final passage, those will also have to be encompassed. And then that number has to be summed up. And really the only option is to either accept greater spending cuts, which I don't know if that'll be the appetite depending on the level. I mean, if it's $5 million, then it's probably not a big deal. But if it's greater than that, will we have to raise the personal income tax rate? That's really the trade-off.
All right, so basically, we're looking at an increase to the 3% flat rate on the personal income tax.
Yes, if the sum of all of the changes add up to be a significant amount of money, you're going to have to go up on the personal income tax rate.
And why is the corporate side not an option?
So the corporate side doesn't currently, as long as that constitutional amendment hasn't passed, which we're kind of operating under that assumption until it does, that money from the corporate rate all flows into the revenue stabilization fund, and it can't backfill the rest of the budget, right? And so that is why we look at basically the individual income and the sales tax. Those are both going into the general fund, so they're somewhat fungible. But
I see what
it
you're
doesn't
saying.
work the same way with the corporate side.
So for next year, we wouldn't be able to use even an increase to the corporate rate from that 3.5% wouldn't benefit us because it would still be going to
It would just go into the Revenue Stabilization Fund.
until that amendment gets adopted, if it does.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Representative Orgeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Wright, Secretary Nelson, thank you for all you have done in this. The changing of 0.45 to 0.40 within, and the sunset would still be in, or the killing of the sunset would basically make 4.4 be the fabric of sales tax for Louisiana for the foreseeable future. With the 0.45 having originally been a temporary sales tax, and us and in another world having that the triggers that were lowering were triggers that were considered very difficult to get to lower our income tax, but now as testimony showed that we're approaching those, is there any possibility or has there been any consideration for retiring the 0.44 after we get to zero on income tax to get back to 4% for the state?
So, I mean, I would say that the elimination of the personal income tax a little further down the road. So maybe when we get there, I think it'd be fair to say if we're still growing and we have significant revenues, then to continue to lower the income tax, or sorry, the personal or the sales tax. Sorry.
Yeah, the point is that not very long ago we were talking about what was perceived as nearly unachievable triggers to make it go down, and now we're actually getting close to them or hitting them. And now that we're changing all of this, should one REC estimate after another come back that all of this change with the 0.40 be real, so good, the work that we hopefully did here and passes, that we get the personal income tax rate to zero. Is there any room for amending to make the 0.4 go off as it was promised to the people of Louisiana and keep that money in their pockets?
So after the personal income tax goes away, should we get rid of the 0.4? I would say that you're going to have to, if the 0.4 goes away, then you're going to have a revenue loss on top of whatever has already happened, right? So
it would be only after far, hopefully far into, or not that far into the future, but it would be after the income tax gets to zero. Just adding trigger language to the current bill.
I mean, let me just say this. I know people have said certain things were promised to the people about 0.45 and such. I didn't make that promise, and I think a lot of the people who were here didn't make that promise. I do agree that it would be better to go through that once we've gone through the income tax, right? Changes and ratcheting it down. I know one thing that came up when we were first debating the temporary 0.45 is that it's really not ideal to have that when it comes to like bond ratings and things like that. So I would definitely think, I mean, we've talked about this, the sales tax when you combine local and statewide is, we probably want to take it down eventually, but we do need to generate the job growth, the new income, bring people in the state first. Now that could happen pretty quickly, quite frankly, but it may not, that may be 4, 5, 6 years.
All right. Okay, I just wanted to be on record saying that ultimately I'd like to get us back to the 4% after the income tax has been completely retired. And maybe we'll take that up at some later fiscal sessions. But thank you very much again for all of y'all efforts.
All right, thank you, Representative Borges. Representative Selders.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just like Rep. Ojuwan, I want to be on the record that the Council on Aging will be taken out of this and has been with this amendment, correct?
That's right. That was part of the 5 amendment set that we just did.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's definitely one of the most vulnerable populations, and we want to, anything we can do to help them, we want to do it. Thanks.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you. Representative Landry.
Shortest one. I asked this earlier and just want to make sure we're kind of on the same page that, so if we kept the 0.45 and the 2% utilities and did nothing, we would basically be in the same position as keeping the 0.45 and making all these reductions. All the reductions in services, those are reductions in personal income tax, corporate income tax, and corporate franchise tax.
You said you said it before. I may not have.
I know, you were warming up in there with me. If we keep,
I was trying to pay attention, I promise.
I know, if we keep 0.45, keep the 2% utilities, and don't do anything else, we will be in roughly the same financial position as keeping the 0.45, cutting personal, cutting corporate, cutting franchise.
So I don't know that I can totally speak to that question, but let me say this. I think I've always saw this as the beginning of Louisiana's movement towards growth. It's a whole new story, a whole new direction. So you could argue, I guess, that certain things would go and you'd be at the same levels. That's possible, but I don't think you would do what we need to do, which is to set Louisiana up for growth. And that's ultimately where I think is the most important part of this plan.
Can the Secretary answer my question?
So the revenue loss from the 0.45 going away is about $500 million. The revenue loss from the business utilities tax is about $200 million. It's about $700 overall. If you're saying all the other things don't really balance out, I mean, I think if you maintain those right now, you'd be right where we are right now. So everything would be this. I mean, it'd just be the status quo, right? And so
that's kind of my question.
Yeah. So obviously, maintaining the status quo would maintain the status quo. That's true.
Right. Well, but no, we wouldn't be further in the hole.
Well, no,
I might not be describing this exactly right, but right now,
the temporary tax. So the 0.45 and the business utilities are set to expire in July, right? And so they would not expire,
right?
And then you would not have the $300 million deficit would not exist. I don't know that those two together would make up all the difference to cover the teacher pay raise, and especially if the other triggers and everything else hit, then that's possibly to complicate that picture.
I would think that would be an easy answer to say, are we going to have, within the next year or 2 years, are we going to have more money in the bank with this plan, or are we going to have about the same amount of money in the bank and the same amount of deficit as if we just kept the 4, 5, and the 2?
So the state will lose more revenue from passing this plan compared to just passing those, because if you just pass the 0.45 and the business utilities, that's just revenue increases. There's no offsetting decrease. You're just increasing taxes or increasing the revenue. Mm-hmm. And so all the other components of the plan are what you're paying for by doing those things, as well as the services bill, right? And so you're giving everybody an income tax cut. You're getting rid of their prescription drug costs. All those other elements are involved, and those are offset by these pieces.
So while, a lot of us disagree on principle or theory or whatever here, in my view, we're kind of just moving money around. I think Rep. Willard and I forget who else asked, but if there are significant changes to this bill or Riser's bill, that the money would likely be moved from the personal income tax provision?
The rate of the personal income tax
would change.
Go up.
Would change. Okay. And then in choosing which of these to exempt, were you looking at how much money you would get from adding them back in, or how many people use them, or how long they've been there? Was there a rhyme or reason for choosing some of these?
The exemption.
The exemptions, yes.
Yeah, so some of them are suspended, were suspended as part of the 0.45 and the business utilities in 2017, whenever that was done. And so I think there's about 60 of them that are currently suspended. So the ones that were already suspended, we said, well, obviously we're not using them now. We can get rid of those. Generally, they're not worth, most of them are not worth all that much money. And we were just trying to simplify. The biggest, I think, factor was whether or not the state and the locals exempted the same things, whether or not some of them were local. You know, some parishes opted out and some parishes didn't. And so we looked at it as more of a trying to make sure those things are uniform, because that's one of the biggest complaints about Louisiana sales tax code is that different things are taxed in different parishes that don't match with the state taxes. It's very complicated. And so we tried to simplify that. That was a goal, not just to get rid of the exemptions, but to make the basis of the state and local taxes uniform. And then generally we just looked at it and said, is there some kind of tax policy reason for having this, or is this just some special preference? So if it seemed to be either a special preference, we would get rid of it. If there was some tax policy reason, this is what other states do too, we typically preserved it.
Okay, two questions. Two new questions. The part about making sure the state and the city match, I think that's also addressed in another bill, because I think I asked you about it.
That's also in the constitutional amendment. And so in the constitutional amendment, there's a requirement prospectively of requiring the state and local sales tax bases to match. So you can't pass a local or a local option tax. You would have to make it a state tax that is going to cover the state and local piece, or it's going to apply to everybody.
So then does this bill remove all or most of any exemptions or taxes on locals that don't, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? How does this affect certain local tax collections?
So some of the exemptions that we're removing are local options, or there are exemptions that the state granted and there was no local exemption for. And so basically it makes those two things, makes the state and the locals generally uniform in all except for a few exceptions.
Okay. And you said tax policy reasons. What do you mean by that?
So, for example, like taxing manufacturing inputs, things like that. So it's like a business input, which we generally try to not tax from. They're going to pay tax on the final product. You don't want to tax when they input something into the machine to make whatever the final product is, right? I think that's it. I think there's agricultural. Some of the agricultural exemptions are the same way. I mean, it's not a manufacturing process, but they're buying seeds or fences or something like that. So it's kind of a business input that we're trying to exempt. So I think those are the general categories. Or then medical is another one of those. It's just we exempt prescriptions, at least on the state level now, and will be in the future on the local level, hopefully. And so we tried to make parity between those things, and then basically make that kind of broader base of medical expenses tax-free.
And so medical would be a tax policy reason that you're continuing to exempt it? It seems like tax policy reason is like a business reason. Is that what you mean by that?
So, I mean, generally it's just you're not trying to compound taxes. So if you pay taxes on a final product, you don't want to pay tax on the intermediate steps of that product. And that's, I would say, the more tax policy reason. From a Louisiana perspective, we've exempted, and honestly, most states exempt every state besides Illinois and us exempt prescription drugs. And so we're trying to bring uniformity on that, and also just not taxing people on their prescriptions.
Just from a sort of humanity standpoint.
Well, that was, I mean, honestly, that's
and it's politically popular.
I think it's a better policy. I think every other state does it. It's pretty consistent with what we're trying to do. At the same time, we needed to tax some services in order to do that, which not everybody agrees with. But I think people would rather pay tax on their car washes than their prescriptions.
I would agree with that. And let me see where I put this. I don't know if the committee would want to do this now or on the floor. But on that note, I would like to add an amendment in concept to adding back, I guess this would be correct, the exemption on diapers, because I personally think that they're the same thing as prescription medication. There's a lot, God, for decades now, the state has gone on and on about they're very pro-life. So I think we should add it for that reason. We also have a high teen pregnancy rate. Over 2/3 of our births are Medicaid births. Whether you are wealthy or not, when the baby is born, it's a tough time. And I really just think diapers or something like Band-Aids or any medication. So I don't know if that's something we could do now or what the chair would prefer for an issue such as this. Just the diapers.
Representative Landry, we're actually still on the initial amendment
Oh.
right now, so we need to adopt that before we talk about others.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Sorry, we'll be here a long time then, I guess. So I'll take that for now, and I think those were my only, let me make sure. Yeah, that's my only questions. Thanks.
All right. Members, I know it's been a lengthy debate already, but just as a reminder, we are still in the initial amendment. Okay, Representative Farnham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the, there's been a lot of discussion about MME along the trails here. I don't see that in this amendment. What's going on with that at this point?
Yeah, Rep. Farnham, they actually told me just a few minutes ago that the MM&E piece is not in this amendment. Our intention was to continue to allow the local option for MM&E, and so we'll work on that, between now and the floor.
If I might, real quick, Representative Farnham, just so you know, a little bit of a miscommunication between us and the off department. We did get amendments, but we weren't able to do it in time to come here, so we just didn't want to. As you can imagine, 140 pages and all the different movement. It was just we couldn't get it done in time.
I completely understand that. It's a huge component to local government because in my parish, it's worth many millions of dollars to them in tax revenue that they just can't. No agency can afford to give it up. So to have it back where it was optional to them would mean a lot to all local government, I would imagine, across the whole state. When you go to moving the tax to the 0.4 instead of 0.45, do you have an estimate of how a dollar value, ballpark dollar value of the exemptions that have been rolled back to this point? The value of all the exemptions that have been eliminated to this point?
So you mean so there's, I think, 60 or so exemptions that are currently suspended?
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
I think that collectively that's about $14 million, and those are also scheduled to come back on the books on July 1st of next year if we don't do anything, right?
So you have some that are already scheduled to sunset. We have some more that are being eliminated in this package of bills that are coming together across the board. What's the value of all the cuts?
Oh, of all the exemptions and all the exemptions and
cuts.
changes?
Just ballpark number.
I think it's about, I think it's like $100 million maybe or so in total exemption value, including those ones that are suspended that would have come back on, that $14 million.
What's the total value of all the exemptions that the state has that are revenue losses today?
The sales tax exemptions?
To all exemptions.
It's pretty significant, but I'll tell you most of the significant exemptions in the sales tax area are food for home consumption, which is $500 or $600 million. Fuel, motor fuel, so that has an exemption because they pay the gas tax on top of that. That's like another $500 million. Residential utilities and prescription drugs, all collectively, I think that's like $1.5 billion, more or less. So that's where most of the sales tax exemptions come from, are those kind of constitutionally protected areas that those.
Yeah,
taxes.
Was the food for home consumption part of the Stelly plan that was repealed several years ago? Part of the Stelly plan that didn't get repealed. They repealed the revenue side of it, but not the exemption side of it.
Yes, that's correct. And so basically the trade-off, I think it was in like 2003 with the Stelly plan, was to exempt prescription drugs, to exempt residential utilities, to exempt food for home consumption. And the trade-off was they were going to raise income taxes on everybody. Well, it turns out raising income tax on everybody wasn't too popular, and they didn't do that constitutionally. So then they came back and reduced everybody's income taxes, but they kept all the sales tax exemptions. So What we have effectively done is trade those exemptions for higher sales tax rates, because we then went back, raised the sales tax rate to accommodate the fact that we had now lowered income taxes again. So that was the Stelly trade-off and the somewhat of an unwinding.
So when you get to the point where we're trying to overall increase I guess reduce our tax liability within the state, I think we've lowered income tax on everybody, which gives them more disposable income at the end of the day. Do the exemptions compound that? Many people are still getting the exemptions that were put in place to help reduce the impact of your taxes. And now we've reduced their income tax, but we're still going to give them exemptions on top of that. Do you think there's a solid case for that?
So like the residential utilities and the food for home consumption exemptions?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, so Mississippi taxes food for home consumption, other states tax food for home consumption, not all of them. Residential utilities are taxed depending on what state you're in. I think Arkansas taxes it, Florida taxes it. Florida taxes residential utilities at their full sales tax rate, and then it applies a gross receipts tax on top of that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I obviously I'm in the tax business. People tell me all the time they want to be like this and that in this state, and you have to say, well, you got to look at the whole picture of what they're taxing. You can't just look at the good parts that you like and not the bad parts, right? So
exactly.
I think that the tax package that we developed, we've tried to kind of go through those political realities and say what would people be okay with, and what makes the most sense given where we are, and so that's kind of what we came up with. I mean, at the end of the day, if you got rid of a lot of those exemptions, you could reduce rates even further. You could do a lot of things, but I don't think the public would be supportive of that, especially on top of the level of change we're already proposing to them.
Yeah. It's my personal belief that we could dive deeper, way deeper into the exemption book to eliminate many of these things that we're proposing, taxes on services. I think we could make a much deeper dive into the exemption book. My personal feeling is that we ought to just eliminate it altogether, and we could have a lot of zeros in all of our tax policy. So, I hope this conversation continues to grow as we go along on how do we pare that exemption book down instead of the 1.5-inch version we have today to about maybe a 1/4-inch version.
Representative Farnum, I know we've had a conversation about some of this, independently. I just want to say I totally agree that there are things that we could do that I personally like better, not unlike what you just said. I think the thing about this step in my mind is it's the beginning of a movement forward. There's nothing about this that's perfect in everybody's minds. There's going to be some little element that we want to change, but I think the way this sets it up is it makes it the art of the possible in 2-3 years, maybe the next term when I won't be here and can come watch from afar on video, whatever. But my point is just that's what I love about this overall plan is it kind of sets us in a direction that Louisiana can experience growth and greater revenue and things like that. Thanks.
I think we all agree that doing the same thing we've been doing forever is just never going to work. So I'm really happy that we're making a move to do something different. I would hope that our first choice to go digging for revenue is in that exemption book. That's my hope.
I will say, Rep. Farnum, you made significant, in this session, should all this come to fruition, you have made significant progress in cutting down that exemption book.
Yeah, because it's a book of winners and losers is what it is.
Yes.
So,
and we're going to save a lot of money on printing costs now that which is good because I guess we're taxing it now, right? So
that's true. Thank y'all for y'all's hard work on this.
All right. Vice Chairman Brass on the amendment.
And this is my last question on amendment. I know Secretary had some conversation with a couple of industries back in the rural parishes, and I was expecting to see an amendment in this set, but I don't see it unless I overlooked it. And it was for the natural gas that's used in the production of direct reduced iron, so that it continues to be treated as a raw material. So do we have any intentions of including that
Yeah, so
piece in?
we spoke with some folks about that last night, actually. We do have some language that just clarifies that. I mean, we don't think that changes current law because that's currently how it's being treated, but we are planning on adding that language as well to clarify that that's just a component product, a component of the manufacturing product, and not an individual thing. So that maintains current law. We're already working on that language, and we'll do that between now and the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I know that's big,
Yeah.
for some folks.
It is. Thank you,
Okay.
Secretary.
Oh, sorry. The board is clear. I'm going to offer up amendments at 99 to House Bill 10. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that amendment's adopted. Representative Wright, on your bill.
Members, I don't know if there's a whole lot new to say, and I certainly welcome talking further questions, but as I mentioned earlier, I think this is a necessary part of a broader plan that sends us in the right direction. I hope you agree. I realize that there's some people who are, concerned about dealing with sales tax versus income tax. I am not. I think it's the way to go. I think lowering to a flatter income tax, if not to a zero flat income tax, is smarter and puts Louisiana in a position to grow, which we have not seen in a very long time.
All right, Representative Myers with a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I promise bringing you coffee wasn't a sign of
Is there something in
all
this?
of the questions to go.
Do me a favor.
I just know you mentioned it like 2 hours ago, and I did nothing with it, so sorry. You mentioned the business inputs earlier when we were in the amendment, and I jumped in and jumped out of queue just to come back in, once that amendment was closed up. But just curious your thoughts on that front. So you mentioned that from a business input standpoint, I mean, that's typically something we haven't taxed, because if you're renting, you're gonna tax when you rent, and if you ever sell that piece of equipment, you're gonna tax at that point in time. And I'm just curious, is there any other state besides us that, if this would pass in its current format, that would be taxing on the input like this?
I mean, I think that it's it's like a principle that we'd rather not tax things that are business inputs. I think it's not perfect. At the same time, businesses as an end consumer is not necessarily a business input, right? So, I mean, if your business is streaming Spotify or something in the speakers, they're really the end consumer of that. They're not using that to build a product or do something else. So, I think other states generally, I think, follow that same, at least maybe the southern states that I'm more familiar with. I think generally they follow that same principle as trying to exempt most of the business inputs. And so, I think that in the package as a whole, that's what we tried to exempt too. I mean, that was part of the reason why, like, attorneys and engineers, why those weren't included in the services bill. Well, a lot of those are really just kind of business inputs in a final product versus an individual end consumer goal, right?
So am I reading it wrong that if this were to pass, we would not be exempting that anymore? On the input side, we would actually be. I'm thinking about hearing from local rental places in my district who are concerned about actually paying the tax on the input, and I guess there's some confusion about what this bill does on
the rental side. Yeah. So one of the exemptions that is currently sunset in here is the rental is an exemption for the purchase of rental items, right?
Yeah.
And so the thought behind that was, if you go buy a truck for a delivery van, that you pay sales tax on that, right? Well, if you go buy a truck and then rent it out, then now that you don't pay sales tax on that. And so that was kind of the thought process behind it, was that if we're treating one business that is using it for a business is now going to have to pay, one of them has to pay tax currently and the other one doesn't. I mean, that's really the thought behind that. And so there are elements of the sales tax code that apply to businesses, and the idea behind the rental change was to make it uniform.
Got it. Might be something that I may ask for some help with to try to get something on the floor, just because I heard you say the good parts and the bad parts, and I guess our interpretation of it right now is like we might have taken a bad part and maybe didn't mean for it to be like that in this bill. And then just secondarily, and again, be quick, I'm going to try to bring something on the floor to help clarify some of the medical language. Nothing that I think will impact this bill or the fiscal note of the bill, but I do think that there is some clarity that will help medical providers on referring. And right now, there's some very pointed language inside the bill that I don't think speaks to, if let's say a nurse who has or nurse practitioner has the authorization to make a prescription or order a prescription right now. I think the bill points specifically to one level of care. And so there's some things in there that I'd hope that we can get you guys to look at before we get to the floor.
Yeah, sure. And those have been brought to our attention on something that we can clean up and from current law.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Willard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right. Got a few questions. So in the amended bill, does it touch on vendors' compensation for businesses who collect and remit the sales tax?
Yes.
The amendment, it changes. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so currently we give a percentage of the sales tax collected back to the company that collects it, I think up to $1,500 a month. And so this does sunset that. It gets rid of that provision. So
Okay.
you no longer will receive vendor's comp.
Okay, so I think that could you give me some examples of who that was applying to? Does that apply to car dealerships?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that it would apply to car dealerships if they. Well, actually, Luke, you want to come? I mean, so I'm not sure about car dealerships because I don't know that they. Maybe they charge sales tax. I mean, really all retailers in general. So Walmart, right? Walmart sells X amount of products and they collect so much sales tax, and then they get to keep a piece of that, so that it's like up to $1,500 a month.
Like 1.5% or.
Luke Morris, Assistant Secretary. It was capped, I think, back in 2016 or 18. So, like the Secretary said, it's $1,500 per 18 or 19. It was capped at that $1,500. So that's the maximum vendor's comp per month. But it does apply to anyone who submits a sales tax return. If the return is timely filed and timely paid, then vendor's comp is automatically included as a deduction.
And so for now that's gone. They won't be able to retain that. Okay.
No.
I was just getting clarity on it. All right. On page 102, it starts at line 12. It's talking about machinery and equipment purchased by utility. Same concern that I had on the services piece. Would that include repairs, maintenance? Because anything that they have to do that they get additional taxes on, they're going to pass on to ratepayers.
Representative Willard, sorry, real quick, did you say page 102 you're talking about?
Mhm.
Okay. Sorry.
Line 12.
I was trying to save some trees and.
I believe
Right now it says machinery and equipment purchased.
Right. So it's focusing on that tangible personal property. That's what is exempt. Right?
It's an exemption, so
Yeah,
that would be exempt.
What I'm asking is, what about maintenance and repairs? Those will not be exempt here?
They are exempt currently, and this bill. The repairs and maintenance of TPP is taxable right now. So this bill doesn't do anything to change that. The services bill is what would tax the labor that would go along with that.
Okay. All right. I thought I marked the page number for it, but I noticed that we are getting rid, correct me if I'm wrong here, sales tax exemption for, I guess, purchases made by nonprofits. It was Goodwill, organizations like that. Are you familiar with what I'm
Yeah, I
referring
think
to?
there's a couple of those that are individually listed.
So they were able to retain a portion of the sales tax that they were collecting. Is that correct?
No, that's basically like if they go and buy shelves or something, right? Then when they buy the shelves, then that's going to be an exempt purchase for them. I think is what the scope of that exemption was. And there's a few organizations that were.
Well, So I was Goodwill reached out to me, and they said that they currently charge a state sales tax, and they are permitted to retain some of that. Is that
That's
accurate
the
or no?
vendor. That is the vendor's comp.
That's the vendor's
Yeah, that's the
compensation.
vendor's comp.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But there's a second provision as it relates to certain nonprofits that I think is different from what you're referring to.
Yeah, so not vendor's comp. So that what they're talking about is vendor's comp. What I think you're talking about is the purchases by the entities. So if these nonprofit entities go and buy something, then they have an exemption so that they don't have to pay sales tax on that purchase for them. They're not buying something to sell it to somebody else, because that would already be exempt as a sale for resale. But they're buying something like shelves or I don't know, a bucket and a mop or something like that. And so there's a couple of organizations that have specific exemptions that say when they go and buy a bucket and a mop, then they don't have to pay sales tax on those elements.
Okay, so what you were saying with Goodwill, the tax they charge, and they're able to retain some of it, that's on the vendor's compensation
Yes.
issue?
And that's the same with Walmart and everybody else. It's
Yeah.
the same.
So I can tell you for Goodwill, they said it's about $1 million a year. They use it for workforce development, technical college activities that is not covered by grants. They help people get certifications in medical billing, medical assistance, IT support, all jobs that we have a need for, helping people to get jobs. And so if that goes away, they won't be able to do that good work in the communities. Have you guys given any thought to allowing, I guess, some of those nonprofits to continue retaining that?
I don't know that $1 million seems like a lot for their vendor's comp. I don't know. I think the $30 million is like the total value for the entire state of Louisiana. So
It might be a combination.
So yeah, I mean, we would have to look at that more, because I don't know where that $1 million comes from. If that, I think that. Okay, yeah. So I think that is the purchase of that is their sales tax exemption. So that is the purchases for their operating costs or their operating items.
So with that going away, they'll have an additional $1 million in the cost of operations.
So they would have to pay sales tax on the things that they are buying, and so
For them, it'd be about
that
$1
is
million.
what I mean. That's not money that they're getting from anybody. That would be
No,
an
okay, I
exemption on
get-
something, a reduction of a. If I don't know, it surprised me that they would be able to calculate that even almost, because it would be kind of on every purchase. Every time somebody goes to Walmart and buys something, they would get that exemption. So it might be some other source of revenue or something that they're talking about. I don't know. We can look at it.
Okay. All right. School bus purchases, that exemption is gone.
Let's see. Can you give me like a page number? I think that one is one that we.
That one is scheduled to be repealed.
Okay. Cell phones. I'm just bringing up ones that I thought were interesting. So we're not being taxed on those right now?
You're paying tax on cell phones right now. What do you have, like a line number or a page number you can give me?
I didn't mark every page and line number, but I'm pretty sure
A lot of these things are very, very specific on what exactly it is and who's buying it, and so there's.
So these are going to be under, I'm pretty sure I pulled these out of repealed exclusions, exemptions, rebates, and credits, which start at 135. All right. Like there was toy donations, newspapers, laundromats.
So some of those, Brandy Averett for the department, back to the cell phones, there's provisions in there that provide an exemption in one instance or sets a purchase price if you're because what would happen are the cell phone companies, if you're buying it with the service, they wouldn't charge anything for the phone, so to speak. So we're repealing those so that those will now just be taxed under current law like everybody else. So there's not a special provision.
Okay. So that's going to be for all of those that I just mentioned?
Oh, tell me the other ones.
School buses, laundromats,
So the school buses are going to,
toy donations.
school buses, that's when it's purchased by someone other than a school.
So schools will not be included?
Correct.
Okay. So look, I got a message from Goodwill. They said the issue that I'm referring to is on page 13984, sales tax collected by qualified charitable institution, that they get about $1 million from that.
I think that they have to be, I think, saving $1 million in sales tax that they don't have to pay, because the state's not making a payment for any of that, I don't think.
Okay, if that's something that we could look
We
at.
can look at, we can look at it and see, so we.
Okay. All right. All right. I'll come back. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Well, the board's actually clear. I didn't know if Representative Willard, we're about to move on to testimony from others. Okay. All right. So first I wanted to call up David Lewis and Tamara Crane with the Council on Aging. Did you guys still want to come up and testify? Okay. Are you dropping your opposition with the amendment, or do I still need to submit the red cards? Okay.
Just a quick comment, Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Vice Chairman.
Just state your name real quick for me.
My name is David Lewis. I'm the president of the Louisiana Council on Aging Directors Association. And I want to thank this committee and I want to thank this body for the work you're doing. And thank you for reinstating the tax exemption for our seniors. I waive any other comment.
Thank you.
We also doubled their standard deduction.
All right. Okay. If you guys want to probably get up now. Jan Moeller with Invest in Louisiana, Lacey Giroux with the National Diaper Bank Network, and Matt Brady with Enterprise Mobility. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lacey Giroux, and I'm the Director of Government Relations at the National Diaper Bank Network. I'm also a proud resident of House District 94. The National Diaper Bank Network leads a nationwide movement dedicated to ensuring that everyone has the basic necessities they need to thrive, including diapers and period supplies. Here in Louisiana, there are 4 diaper banks and 4 period supply banks working extremely hard to address the issues of diaper need and period poverty in their communities. They rely on philanthropic donations and volunteer time to keep their efforts going. I'm here today in opposition of House Bill 10, specifically the language that's already been addressed, thank you, Representative Landry, around diapers and period supplies. In 2021, this body voted to pass the bipartisan bill that exempted diapers and period supplies from sales tax, choosing to no longer treat these items as luxury goods, but basic necessities, which they are. Since then, diaper need across the country has rose. There's 1 in 2 U.S. families with young children that are struggling to afford these basic necessities. That's up from 1 in 3 in 2021. Without diapers, parents cannot take their children to childcare, meaning they cannot access work. Period poverty impacts 2 in 5 women and girls across the country, holding them back from school, work, and other opportunities to participate in daily life. These numbers represent what we all know. Diapers and period supplies are expensive, and families nationwide are feeling the impacts. The need certainly exists here in Louisiana. Since Louisiana has passed the legislation in 2021, 10 additional states have passed legislation to exempt diapers from sales tax, period supplies, or both, including our neighbors. I've heard a lot about Texas and Florida today. In those past few years, Texas and Florida have both exempted diapers and period supplies while maintaining not having that state income tax. We cannot go backwards. Adding the tax back on these products will only hurt the people we seek to help, working Louisiana families. Diapers and period supplies may seem small. They're physically small, but these small items impact big things. Just like groceries, just like prescriptions, they are needed to attend school, work, and participate in daily life. They are necessary for reducing the risk of infection and keeping babies, women, and girls healthy. And they provide opportunities for all Louisianans. And for these reasons, I ask that you do not move forward with that language, and I hope that there is an amendment that is made to make sure that diapers and period supplies are no longer or continue to not be taxed in Louisiana. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Matt Brady. I'm the Vice President and General Manager for Enterprise Mobility here in Louisiana. We're headquartered out of Metairie. Enterprise in Louisiana operates Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Alamo Car Rental, National Car Rental, Enterprise Commercial Truck Rental, Enterprise Car Sales, Enterprise Leasing, and Commute by Enterprise. We're a 65-year-old decentralized, family-owned, family-operated business that offers mobility solutions through our network of more than 30,000 vehicles operated by our 1,000-plus employees at more than 100 offices in Louisiana. Enterprise appreciates the goal of this tax reform session. We know it's complicated, and the bills presented, and we're currently working with the governor, Secretary Nelson, and Representative Wright, but we would ask for careful consideration of amending House Bill 10, which includes an express revocation of the longstanding tax treatment of vehicles purchased exclusively for rental and leasing in the regular course of business. Louisiana currently does not apply sales tax to tangible property that is purchased, as we heard today, as an input to a business. Louisiana does, however, apply sales tax to retail transactions involving such property. This is consistent with tax policy for all other wholesale purchases of inventory by businesses. We've heard many examples of local businesses with having their inputs and their goods not taxed and brought in and then taxed when they go to sell those products. Proponents of removing this exemption claim motor vehicle rental companies and automobile dealerships receive preferential tax treatment via an exemption from state sales tax on the purchase of vehicles. The fact is, rental companies are treated just like everyone else who purchases goods exclusively for rental, lease, sale, or resale. When rental car companies or anyone else purchase a vehicle for any other use, there is no such exemption. Repealing this exemption would completely upend that policy and create an outlier tax treatment that specifically targets car rental companies and automobile dealerships, which in turn would be inconsistent with every other state in the union. This double taxation would have a negative impact on car rental companies and dealerships in Louisiana, as well as the thousands of Louisiana residents who rent and lease vehicles from Enterprise and our brands each day here. There is a mischaracterization that rental car companies' customers are out-of-staters traveling here for work or pleasure. The truth is, over 80% of the people renting cars in Louisiana are Louisiana residents and getting a vehicle while their car is being serviced, repaired, or traveling on business from different parts of the state. Imposing millions of dollars in new taxes on an industry that continues to face headwinds with rising costs of inventory acquisition, repair, windshields, overheads, and personnel costs would further jeopardize large and small operators alike. Under normal operating conditions, the vehicle rental industry generates an estimated $500 million annually in tax revenue and economic impact for Louisiana. Now more than ever, this unprecedented change in longstanding tax policy would create unnecessary, damaging uncertainty for our business, ultimately impacting the significant tax revenue and fees the state and municipalities receive currently as a result of our business activity. To summarize, Enterprise is asking you to continue our nationally consistent Louisiana tax policy of exempting new car purchases for rental and leasing from sales and use tax. Motor vehicles purchased by rental car companies should not face a different tax treatment than any other goods purchased exclusively for rental, lease, sale, or resale. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee.
All right, thank you. The board is clear. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Representative Wright, we don't have any other people to testify. Where did he go? Yeah, I think we need to get him to close on his bill. Okay. Representative Eccles, did you have a comment or?
Yeah, I was just going to get Rep Wright before it's closed. I know the Enterprise Rent-A-Car gentleman said we'd be the only state in the nation that didn't have that tax treatment. Is there a discussion or ongoing effort to make sure we're competitive? I don't want to set up where we've got like truckers on the edge of the state setting up in Mississippi when we have Enterprise cars setting up on the edge of the state.
Yeah, no, thank you, Representative Eccles. I've certainly discussed with Enterprise and their representatives, and I think it's worth pursuing. I mean, I think bottom line is we have to sort of check some things out before we make a final decision. So I'm certainly open to it, but I'm working with the administration, so we'll kind of see what's there.
Okay. You can close on your bill, Representative Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, look, it's been a long day already, so I'll keep it kind of quick. Would appreciate your support of this bill. I think it's obviously a very important part of the Louisiana Forward Plan. I think it's smart for us to do this. It's not easy. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made and work that has to be done, but I think this is definitely the way to go, and encourage you to support the bill.
All right, thank you. We have a blue card in support from Lance Maxwell on behalf of Governor Jeff Landry in support. Then we had our white cards from Clarence Lyman, Uniform Local Sales Tax Board, and then Luke Morris and Richard Nelson with LDR. We have a green card in support from Scott Simon from Americans for Prosperity. Of course, we had our red cards, Matt Brady with Enterprise Mobility, Lacey Giroux with National Diaper Bank Network, Jan Moeller with Invest in Louisiana, Annie Pastors representing herself, and then Debbie Fleming, David Lewis, and Tamara Crane. I think you're all removing your opposition from the Council of Aging. Okay, thank you. All right. Representative Wright, thank you. And I thank everyone for testifying today. I think obviously this is a work in progress. We have a lot of work to do, and there's many more stops to go at this time. I will move with amendments to report House Bill 10 with amendments. Is there any objection? Representative Willard objects. Mr. Wilkinson, please call the roll.
Madam Chair Emerson? Yes. Yes. Vice Chair Brass?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Bamberg?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Bayham?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Billings? Yes. Representative Bryant? Yes. Yes. Representative Eccles? Yes. Representative Farnham?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Galley?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Chance Henry?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Lacombe? Representative Mandy Landry?
No.
No. Representative McMahon? Yes. Representative Myers? Yes. Representative Ogeron?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Selders?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Wilder?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Willard?
No.
No. Representative Young?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. House Bill 10 is moved with amendments, reported with amendments.
House Bill 10 by Chairman Mark Wright. All right. Ms. Little, would you please read in the bill?
Yes, sir. Members, House Bill 10 provides for the rate of state sales tax, sales and use tax, and provides for the exemptions, exclusions, credits, and rebates claimed against sales and use taxes.
All right. Chairman Wright, on your bill.
Thank you, Chairman McFarland. I think this is my first visit to appropriations in 24, so better late than never. Thank you. Members, HB 10 reported out of Ways and Means essentially continues to levy 0.4 of the sales tax, which is a little bit less of what we had at the 0.45, the temporary 0.45. It also addresses a number of exemptions, which I'm happy to discuss if you have questions, and it aligns the local and state tax bases as well, sales tax bases, where it's appropriate. I But I'll just leave it at that and then take questions. If that helps.
Okay. Vice Chairman Hughes for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again for your leadership. And Chairman Wright, let me first thank you for always being respectful and a gentleman. I appreciate your leadership. I know that there were some, I think, amendments earlier today in Ways and Means, and I'm looking at the original fiscal note. Do we have an updated fiscal note? Maybe the fiscal office can come to the table.
We do not, as far as I know, we do not have an updated fiscal note. So, but whether they come to the table,
I can give a real quick answer
Sure.
just on whatever the.
Thank you.
Haven't gotten a chance to look at these amendments at all, so I don't really have
Okay.
anything to add. I know that there was, we went from the 0.45 to the 0.40. I would concur that that is approximately $50 million, but as far as any of the other amendments, I'm just not there yet. I haven't looked at them.
Yeah. No, thank you. Look, and that's not your fault or anybody's fault in this room. I know things are moving fast and furious, but again, as an appropriator, it just really makes it hard to analyze the fiscal impact without the updated fiscal note. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative DeWitt for a question.
No, sir. I did. Sorry.
Okay. I guess I will. All right, there's two cards. Hold on, I'm sorry. I have three cards here. Read in. Lance Maxwell, on behalf of Governor Jeff Landry, present, not willing to speak, but in support. Informational purposes, present and willing to provide information is Clarence Lyman with the, I hope I said that correctly, Louisiana Uniform Local Sales Tax Board, and Luke Morris with LDR. Representative Barat.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the appropriate time, I'd like to move favorable.
Thank you. All right. Representative Barat has made a motion to report House Bill 10 favorable with objection. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Chairman McFarland?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Adams? Yes. Representative Amade? Yes. Representative Bagley? Yes. Representative Barat? Yes. Representative Butler? Yes. Representative Carpenter? No. Representative Carrier? Yes. Representative Coates? Is that right? Representative Coates is a yes. Representative DeWitt? Yes. Representative Fisher? Representative Freeman? Representative Freiberg? Yes. Representative Horton? Yes. Representative Hughes? No. Representative Ilk? Yes. Representative Kerner? Yes. Representative LaFleur? Representative Lyons? No. Representative Mack? Yes. Representative Marcel?
No, ma'am.
No. Representative Owen? Yes. Representative Romero? Yes. Representative Thompson?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Zerang?
A strong maybe.
Yes.
18 yea, 4 nays. No, let me, House Bill 10 is reported favorable.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Personal privilege, hold on.
At this time, Representative Wright moves to call from the calendar House Bill 10.
Without objection.
House Bill 10 by Representative Wright to amend Title 12 and other titles relative to sales and use taxes, provide for the rate of taxation, exclusions, exemptions, credits, rebates, compensation for dealers collecting, remitting sales and use taxes, sourcing a certain bundle transaction, or repeal certain sales and use tax exemptions, exclusions, credits, and rebates.
Rep. Rod on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, HB 10 deals with the sales tax, taking the temporary 0.45. We amended it in committee to be a 0.4, and it would be a permanent 0.4. There's a number of things that are going on in there in case you had not spent time reading the bill, God forbid, 100-something pages, or the digest. So I'll be happy to answer questions as we go forward. But I just want you to know, I think many of you have realized this over the last few days, there's just a lot of complications going on there, but what you're doing is you're aligning bases so that you don't have all this crazy steps between local and state. We also have returned some exclusions or exemptions that were, at least in committee, that we thought was appropriate. And we also have a new set of amendments, and I'll get to those in a moment, but that addresses some further concerns about what's in there and what's not. But essentially, overall, the bill is designed to be used for sales tax. Many of us, myself included, believe that sales tax is the better way to deal with taxes. Many of us want to see us, whether it be personal or other areas, lower income tax and deal with other types of taxes so that we're a more competitive environment, right? And this is the place to do it. I know there are people who voted for the temporary 0.45 last term. People who didn't, term before that. I did not vote for it. But at the end of the day, I basically had one choice. That was the year that we had threatened LSU football to end and things like that. And I just couldn't support that type of effort, even temporary. I think this is a very different choice. This is a choice for a better overall tax package and plan. I really applaud the governor and Secretary Nelson and so many others, you all included, on trying to craft something that makes us or takes us in a direction to make us a more competitive environment, and sales tax is part of that. So, Mr. Speaker, with that, I'm not sure if you want to do the amendments first, the amendment set first, or I'm open to whatever.
We can take up your set of amendments, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Speaker and members, Representative Wright offers up an 8-page set of amendments. That set number is 159.
Rep. Wright on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So there's basically 6 areas of amendments within that full package, so you're aware. First is it's basically a definition regarding medical devices. So there's exemptions for medical categories, and there were a few things that probably need to be redefined a little better. You also have, we changed basically added back in, I'm trying to make sure I get this correct here. The bill in original format was going to eliminate the exclusion for MME. I'm sorry, let me back this up. This stuff gets weird. Basically, what we're doing in this amendment is allowing locals to continue charging a sales tax on manufacturing equipment, okay? And I know from talking to many of you, the administration, the other side, there's concerns about local governments being able to fund government. And so this was an area that was important. It won't have a fiscal note because it has nothing to do with the state fiscal note. So it's simply a change for locals. We also added some definitions related to natural gas. We need to recognize something related to its production, use in production for processing to make sure that its category is right. And then there's a number of medical changes as well. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions, but that's what this amendment set is.
Rep. Jackson for a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Wright, does any of your amendments, I know you said the one on MM&E doesn't have a fiscal note, but does any of the amendments trigger a fiscal note?
To my knowledge, no, these do not. I haven't seen a fiscal. The one part that changed the fiscal note was the 0.45 to 0.4, but that was in committee, and that note should be on there. But the ones that we're adding today should not have a fiscal note.
So is this the only amendment that you plan to bring for this particular bill?
So I have a set of amendments that we're offering right now. That is the only one I have in between discussion with the administration and other legislators I'm going to have to object to other amendments coming up.
But I guess my question is, why are we adding amendments today? I mean, I thought we had come to some agreement that all amendments would be tacked on in the Senate. Are we doing our work today? We're not deferring to the Senate on amendments today? Why we just can't add these amendments over in the Senate? Respectfully.
Well, no, I got what you're saying. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of people here that disagree with that statement. And we want to respect the Senate, work with them.
I agree.
But I mean, I think a lot of people would reject the idea that we shouldn't do some amendments. Now, here's the thing. A lot of us is technical stuff that we didn't include in committee for a variety of reasons. It takes a lot of effort and time by staff to re-engross and put this in, but this is a better posture for the bill to be voted on today, and that's why that is. But again, it doesn't mean there won't be amendments later, whether it be in this chamber or across the way in the Senate or just by agreement.
But you do agree that this body has the authority and the fiduciary and the responsibility.
Rev Jackson, you're going to need to keep your question on the amendment.
Yes, I'm asking about the amendment. So you do agree that this body has the responsibility to take up amendments and not defer to the Senate on amendments?
Yes and no. I mean, some things are ripe to make a decision on about amendments when it's in this chamber. There are other things that are not ripe, and it's better to wait a period of time and some type of agreement between legislature and executive branch to where we want to go. So I'm not going to give you a straight answer on that because there is none as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not always a clear answer. Sometimes you're right, sometimes I'm not so sure.
Thank you.
Make sense? All right.
Rep. Willard for a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Wright, just wanted to walk through the amendments because they are kind of a heavy amendment set. So amendment number 7 seems to be somewhat substantive. Any reason we were changing the definition of a medical device there?
Yeah, sure. So there was 2 representatives who have been involved with medical issues, you know, industry, so to speak, and brought it up. There's basically did the work. I offered to either take it and include it in the amendment set or if they wanted to do it on their own. But as far as I understand, none of it is substantive as far as like changing fiscal notes or how much money is going to be. It's more about making sure that certain things are kept in a category and defined correctly.
Okay. Can you tell me about the impact of amendment number 8?
Okay, sorry. I have the summary with me.
Amendment.
I can pull up, but if you could, you don't mind telling me.
Yeah, it deals with repairs to tangible personal property and about it being sourced where performed, which is, I guess, my question. The meaning of that one.
Okay. I'll be with you in a second. Hold on.
Okay.
It's not jiving with what I have, so let me see.
I'm just reading the language.
Just do it.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
Ms. Pryor, you might want to stay down
It's
there.
about sourcing the taxes for the bill. Like, it's sourcing the property tax for the, not property, what am I saying? Sales tax for those types of repairs and such. It's again, a little more technical on how you're going to collect, not necessarily about specific, how much is it or whatever.
Okay. The next one, amendment number 9, looks like we're deleting a provision and then adding language about a levy on motor vehicles brought into the state by a new resident. I think that may have something to do with the bill Rep. Shammerhorn did earlier this year. It says the vehicle is primarily used for personal purposes.
Yeah, you're talking about the maximum amount collected
$90.
on motor vehicles. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure the origin of that, like why it became a bit of an issue, but that there was a need to define it, and that's where that came from.
What's the impact of it, including this though, in the bill now? Is it more so more defining of a provision?
Yeah, it's more administrative defining. It doesn't change. It's not going to change who's taxed, how much is taxed, or anything like that.
Okay. And then we're deleting a lot of language as well.
Yeah.
You touched on the natural gas stuff.
So that, if I might, I'm sorry, I know you, just to respond to the leading part, like
Sure.
a big part of that manufacturing tax question has to come out. Like, there's a lot of text to pull out if you want to get rid of it.
The MM&E?
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to?
Right. That takes up a ton of space.
Okay.
So changing that.
Okay, so it was specifically referenced with certain parishes as well. I see East Feliciana, I see West Carroll, in the sections being deleted.
Okay, go ahead. You're looking at what page?
Well, if you go to the amendment sets 8 pages, if you start on page 5,
Okay.
I mean 5 through 8 is essentially all deletions.
Right.
And so I'm trying to understand what we're deleting here. And I brought up those 2 parishes because I thought it was kind of odd that we would.
Already, yeah.
Well, if it relates to MM&E, why are we defining 2 parishes?
Because it was already in code is the
Okay.
problem, and that's part of the problem with all of our sales tax legislation is you've got, that's why we got 140 pages. Like, you go to pull one thing out, it includes everything. So you're basically trying to eliminate a section to make it clean. It's the same thing with alignments, that type of stuff. So originally, this was going to stay in there until there was an agreement with legislators to pull it out and let locals tax that. So you're basically deleting what the original changes were.
So everything that's being deleted in Amendment Set 44 deals with MM&E.
Yeah. No.
I see there's a section about feminine hygiene products. I see there's something about radiation therapy, complex biologics, biotherapeutics. There's a lot in here, Chairman Wright. I don't think this is all related to MM&E.
I was trying to talk to you when you were talking.
Okay, sure.
All right. If you go look at page 7.
Okay.
So that's the same amendments, amendment number 44, right?
Mhm.
It goes through 3 pages. All the stuff that you see lines through was being eliminated in the bill itself. The only thing that the amendment, and that's why we're showing it, that is going back in is the section with outlines through it that's not deleted on page 7.
No, I think I get that. What I'm asking is why. All right, let me ask you this. Everything that's being deleted in Amendment Set number 44 is currently in the bill, correct? And so now we're deleting it.
Right, it was being deleted in the bill. It was being, the bottom line is that part was coming out assuming the bill passes, that was still coming out. You needed to take this paragraph and a half to bring back the MME. That's the part that really is changing.
Okay, so.
It's a whole section, and it's part of the problem with the sales tax and all the alignment and things like that, because you've got to do all of this to make the change.
Okay, I think I get it. So you're saying some of this stuff was already being deleted in the bill, but in order to delete the MMM&E exemption, you had to show that in here because it's referenced in those areas too?
Our staff is incredibly thorough, as I know you know, all right? And it's a big challenge to get through all this, and that's part of what you're seeing. And I get it. Sometimes it creates confusion, but it makes perfect sense to do all this, in my opinion.
Well, would you agree that this is a pretty complicated amendment set?
No.
Were you able to explain?
I don't think it's that complicated of an amendment set. I mentioned earlier that I see it mostly as technical, except for like the MME part. But that's just, like I said, we've shown you a paragraph and a half. We've explained the issue itself. And from what we can tell, I mean, there's no fiscal note on the matter. It's not going to change it itself. So I guess I disagree with what you're saying.
Rep Wright, you know I like you.
Yeah, I do.
Do you think you were able to adequately explain this amendment set to me with my questions? Honestly?
Like, wait.
When I was asking you questions about the amendment set, do you think you were able to explain it
Well, I would have been
adequately?
if I had this in my. Looking at, I mean, it's so crazy. I'm using the engrossed part, the summary. That's how I was explaining it to people, because it's just like to get in the lines. I mean, I get it. You got to do it the way you want to do it. I'm just saying, like, had I had that, I probably would have been a little quicker on you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chairman Wright.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Rep. Jackson, for your second set of questions on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Wright, on page 6, I'm reading where it says political subdivisions are prohibited from levying a sales and use tax on telecommunication service as defined in Chapter 2 or Subtitle 2 of this title, not in effect on July 1, 1990. Am I supposed to read that to mean that local governments will be able to increase their sales taxes on telecommunication services?
So you're on page 6, you said?
Yes, sir.
And you're looking at, so that's line 37 down to 46?
Yes.
Okay, that's still what I was just telling Rep. Willard, Chairman Willard. That's being deleted. So we're showing you the section that's being deleted, but the only thing we're coming back with the amendment to include is on page 7, second paragraph at the top.
Right, it's being deleted in the bill, but I guess what I'm asking is, will local governments have the ability to levy a new sales tax on telecommunication devices or services?
Let's see. I think this ultimately ends up, hold on one second. So at the end of, thank you, Chairman.
It's all good.
Basically, that little section,
Yes, sir.
right, about that is actually due to federal law and an exclusion from charging on broadband and internet. So they can't.
So they
And
won't.
that's why we're keeping it in there. And that's the history of all this stuff. There's so many things.
You say that's why we're keeping it in, or that's why we're taking it out?
We're taking it out, right?
Taking it out.
You're taking it out of the code.
Okay.
I thought this was helpful, but I was talking to the staff in the fall about doing some bills in the fiscal session, right? We could have done a whole bill just to clarify some of the code, because it's tough. So we're trying to do it all at once, right? But yes, I know it gets confusing in reading it, but yes.
I agree it gets confusing. I think that's our job, to work through the confusion.
Yeah. I'm not saying you can't ask these questions.
Yes, sir.
I'm not saying I won't answer as best I can. I just mean, like, I don't want anybody to sit there and think we're pulling a fast one.
No,
This is
I agree.
all
I agree our job is to work through the confusion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Got it.
Rep. Stagney for a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 20 on page 90. Starting on line 4, it says orthotics, including prescription eyeglasses, contact lenses, and prosthetic devices in wheelchair lifts prescribed by physicians, optometrists, or licensed chiropractors for the personal consumption or use. Your amendment strikes that language and essentially says only a physician who can prescribe drugs can prescribe orthotics as well, or anything else. I have some concern about that language.
Okay, so all right, you're talking about something in the bill, but what about, what's the amendment?
Your amendment is number 20, and you change the makeup of that, of lines 5 and 6. So I'm just letting you know there's some concern over that.
Okay, I mean, look, I'm not sure I understand why. I'm not saying we shouldn't, or you shouldn't think that way. I'm just saying, like, I mean, I guess there's a couple of ways we could go about it. We can either try to pass it and fix it in between, or you can do an amendment to go for it. I mean,
There are providers who prescribe these things who don't necessarily prescribe drugs. I guess that's the point I want to make.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that I'm trying to bring up how we're going to go about addressing your concern. So we can either go about with these amendments, or you can come back with an amendment or something. I'm not familiar enough to know what you're talking about. I get it, you got a concern, but like, I'm not sure where you want to go with that.
Thank you, that's fine. Okay.
All right.
You have no further questions on the amendment or any objections to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing no objections, the amendment is adopted. Back on the bill. You want to take up the next set of amendments now, or you want to take questions on the bill?
Oh, Mr. Speaker, that might be an interesting question. So these are the only amendments that, in discussing with administration and legislators who have been involved, that I'm prepared to support. So if you want to go through the other amendments, and I'd be happy to do it now, or we can wait till the end.
Madam Clerk, next set of amendments, Madam Clerk.
Next set of amendments are offered by Representative Willard. One-page set of amendments, set number 147.
Rep. Willard on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chairman Wright. I understand that you might not like the amendments, but I can get up here and try. So this amendment deals with an issue I brought up in Ways and Means. Right now, certain nonprofits in the state get to retain sales tax that they collect on donated items. So I'll give you an example. I'm sure many of you in here have donated items to Goodwill, Volunteers of America. There's an organization in the city of New Orleans that does rehab services called Bridge House, Grace House. Those organizations frequently receive donated items. When they sell those donated items in their stores, they get to retain that sales tax if they do certain things with that money. They have to do workforce training, workforce development, some of the things that Goodwill does include providing certifications in medical billing and coding, IT support. They're putting people to work. And in order to get this credit, retain this sales tax, they have to employ people with disabilities. So not only are they providing jobs with this money that they get to retain, but they're providing jobs to people in Louisiana with disabilities. So what this amendment would do would be strike language on page 2 at the end of line 1 and in the digest, which will allow them to continue retaining that money so they can continue doing the good work that they do throughout the state of Louisiana. That's what this does. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Any questions on the amendment? Any objections to the adoption of the amendment? I'm sorry. Rep. Tarver, you have a question on the amendment? Okay. All right, now it showed up. Rep. Tarver for a question on the amendment?
Thank you, Rep. Willard. We were just trying to figure out what it is, how this works.
Yeah.
I want to ask you if this is what is happening when you're talking about retaining the sales tax. Are you saying that if I have a nonprofit and donated an item and I turn around and sell that item for $100, the donated value was $80. I'm charging the tax on the $20 difference, right? Not on the whole $100. Or explain to me, like in that scenario, how what you're doing would work.
So one thing that Bridge House in New Orleans does is cars. A lot of people donate their cars to Bridge House. So let's say you donate your car, they sell that car for $500. They can retain, I don't know if Bridge House would actually qualify here, So I'll go back to Goodwill. Let's say you donate a piece of art to Goodwill. You sell it for $100. The sales tax on that for the state would be what? $4.50? They would be able to retain that $4.50. It's only applicable, and I found the statute.
So they charge the $4.50 to whomever they sell it to, and they get to keep the money?
Correct.
I'm not sure I understand how that makes.
It's in state law right now.
It's currently in law, and we're trying to take it out?
This bill proposes to remove it, correct.
You're trying to take out that?
I'm trying to preserve it because if we do remove it, it's going to be a hit to the operating budgets for some of these organizations.
But if
and
I'm
programs.
I guess I just don't understand. If I'm going to buy something for $100 from that entity,
Yep.
and they charge me $4.50 tax,
Mm-hmm.
are you saying that the state is essentially donating that $4.50?
Correct.
To the organization?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And I can explain, I mean, if y'all want more clarity on it, but, you know. Okay, so Rep. Tarver wants me to explain it. So it works for qualified exemptions. So in order for them to be qualified, they have to have a place of business in the state, routinely sell donated tangible personal properties, spend at least 75% of its annual revenue on job training, placement, support programs for people with workplace disabilities or disadvantages. Then there's some reporting requirements that they have to work through LDR with.
Let me ask it this way. If the person who is buying the art piece pays $104.50, do they know that they're really paying $104.50 to the entity and not $100 to the entity and $4.50 supposedly to the state?
Well, they would probably be paying $109, $110, depending on what
right,
locals.
but they're not remitting it to the other people. Does the person if I'm buying that, do I know that when I see my receipt that says $9 tax, that that entity is keeping that $9 tax and not sending it to the agent, to the taxing agent?
I get what you're saying. Yeah. I would say probably not. They wouldn't keep the whole 9. They would only keep the state portion, which would be, the 4.5% levy. As far as is it on their receipt that, hey, your state sales tax on this transaction, we get to keep? I don't think so. All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hold on one second. You have several questions on your amendment. I'm sorry. Rep. Cruz for a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Willard, can you tell us any idea of the financial impact? How much money is going into the state budget?
How much this would affect the state?
How much is this transaction worth right now? How many taxes are being basically diverted to these entities and not going into the state budget?
I can't give you a number. Secretary Nelson said in committee it wasn't that great. I will tell you that Goodwill told me that this is about close to $1 million for them.
Statewide?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
1.3 for 20. They're expecting it to be 1.3 million for this year. So on the flip side, they would be reducing their operations by $1.3 million.
You have all. Rep. McBacon for a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rep. Willard, you said you found it in statute. I also found something that shows that this is currently not happening in our law. Did you find that statute when you did your research on this?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
So, in our law, RS 47321,
okay,
this is one of the exemptions that currently is not even happening. So this is just making that permanent of what currently is not happening. Are you getting anything that says they currently are able to do this?
Yeah, I mean, Goodwill told me that they do it, so I don't know.
Then maybe we have a differing interpretation of the law, but I'm getting reports here and showing it here as well that it currently is not even in the law, and we're just trying to make that permanent. So, did you know that?
So you're saying it's not on the books right now?
It's on the books, you found in statute, but another statute says during a current time period, right now, not applicable.
Okay. That's not what I heard from Goodwill. Just giving you information that I got from them.
Rep. Marcel for a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Willard, for your amendment. In the law, it says that, correct me if I'm wrong, that they can keep those dollars, but those dollars are utilized to do job training. And many times, would you agree that these are people who may be in drug programs or rehab programs for some reason, and they're training them to get them back to work? Is that what these dollars are utilized for?
Yeah, and a lot of work in the disability community as well.
Okay, so in other words, the state is actually helping people and helping the Goodwill and those types of places to put people back to work and train them, right?
Yes.
So if Goodwill says that they're paying those dollars and it's just about $1.3 million, is that what you said?
For Goodwill.
For Goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
All of us love Goodwill. Did you agree? I think you have a good amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rep. Romero for a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rep. Willard, and I don't know, is Goodwill a for-profit private company or is it a?
Nonprofit.
It's nonprofit. Okay. And they're currently charging tax but not remitting.
Yes.
And
state portion.
The state portion, not the local, right? So, and your amendment will allow them to continue to do that,
Correct.
right? If we don't put your amendment on, they will not be allowed to do that,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Rep. Phelps for a question on the amendment. We have no further questions on the amendment. Are there any objections to the adoption of the amendment? Rep. Wright, on your objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm going to politely object. Donated a car to Bridge House, who you mentioned just this summer. Good people, I'm sure, Goodwill and all. I think the problem is with going these one-route amendments is, we're not all sure about how the fiscal note, not in this case, but this has been suspended since 2018. And so essentially when the 0.45 falls off is when it would have come in place. That's why you had the interaction between Representative McMakin and Representative Willard. So, vote your conscience, but I think I'd rather us have amendments and make the changes in globo so we know the full effect, and I'll leave it at that.
Rep. Wright, will you take questions on your objections? He waves. Representative Willard, would you like to close on your amendment? Would you like to close on your amendment? He waves. Okay, members, Representative Willard has offered up a set of amendments which Representative Wright has objected to. All those in favor of those amendments vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. Madam Clerk, please vote machines. Members, vote your machines. Members, vote your machines. Members, vote your machines. Right, no. Members, vote your machines. Members, you're voting. Clerk will close the machine. If 71 nays, 25 yeas, and the amendment fails to pass. Madam Clerk, next amendment.
Next set of amendments are offered by Representative Mandy Landry, one-page set number 133.
Rep. Landry on your amendment.
Yep. So for those of you who were here, you probably remember in 2021, Rep. Freeman passed this tax exemption for diapers and feminine products. She cannot be here, so I'm helping her with it. This one amendment would bring back the exemption just on diapers. I'm kind of surprised it was deleted, as anyone with a child or grandchild knows a diaper is a necessity, and frankly, it's a medical product. I guess you would say you can't not put it on your child. In Louisiana, 2/3 of our babies are born to a mother on Medicaid. about 24% of children live in poverty. We have a high teen pregnancy rate. I think given the small amount of money this is, which is around $1 million, and the dramatic difference it could mean to our more impoverished mothers, it's important. I also, frankly, am a little surprised by the winners and losers here. I mean, ship supplies, oil field, things that make money, horse betting, funeral directors, all of that remains exempted, but Little Sisters of the Poor, Habitat for Humanity, Lighthouse of the Blind, and mothers are losing their exemption. So I understand the politics of this here, but I also understand that pretty much everyone in here either has a child or a grandchild or a small child in their life, and they know how difficult it is in those early years from from birth to about 3 years old. So I just ask that you think about this from a personal point of view.
Rep. Bayham for a question on the amendment.
Representative Landry, Representative Freeman had actually had a more comprehensive bill that also excluded feminine hygiene products. How come you didn't include that in your amendment?
I wanted to try to lower the amount a little to see if it would be a little more amenable to people. Like I said, I also understand the politics of things here, and diapers are a lot more easier for men and women to understand. The people who need the feminine products are the same people who give birth to babies, so to me it makes sense. But just from a...
Excuse me, you're defining a woman?
Don't start with me, please. This is about diapers, and the reason I left it off was to try to get this passed if I can, because I think it is absolutely essential, especially in a state with so many children and women in poverty.
And what is the fiscal, what's the fiscal note on this amendment?
So I didn't get a new one, but the Department of Revenue's report, or whatever it's called, from 2021 said that it was around $1 million. That may go up a little.
Just for diapers or for the
That
Finneman
was for
projects
both,
as well?
but the number probably will be going up a little given the politics of the last couple of years.
Thank you, Representative Landry.
Thank you.
Rep. Hilferty for a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a frequent purchaser of diapers, and hopefully on my way out of that path, I can tell you that diapers are not inexpensive. They are used frequently in my household. And for anyone around here, I mean, you guys all had kids. You remember the diaper days, right? They were not cheap. And you can imagine this is something that affects all over the state, people in our districts. And let me also point out, diapers are for babies, but certainly we'll see diapers, used sometimes by the elderly. So this kind of runs across the spectrum of our constituencies. So thank you, Rep. Landry, for bringing this.
You bring up a good point. I forgot to mention that this does cover adult diapers. And I don't know if Rep. Z remembers, but I think he's distracted. When some of us were collecting supplies for him and Tanner after Ida, one of the number one items was adult diapers, because it's something that people don't really think about how many people need it. And also, by the way, if you have 2 or 3 small children under a certain age, this becomes a big burden.
Rep. Newell for a question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I forgot to unpress my button because my question was going to be, was the exemption for the diapers going to be just for babies or adults as well? So thank you for clarifying that for us. Thanks.
Rep. Morcell for a question on the amendment.
Thank you. Rep, is this the bill that was passed by Representative Amy Freeman?
Yep.
And I think it overwhelmingly passed the House and Senate?
Yeah, there were amendments back and forth because it was a fiscal year, but yes, it passed both. It's here today.
And it does include diapers for both babies and adults, correct? And those exemptions are important because Louisiana is a pro-life state, isn't it?
Very much so.
And so we want people to have babies.
They're having lots of them.
And if they have babies, we ought to want to assist with those diapers and the taxes. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for bringing the amendment.
Okay, you have no further questions on the amendment? Is there any objections to the adoption of the amendment? I'm sorry. 1 second. Rep. Emerson, do you have a question? There's no light that showed up over here, so I'm not trying to ignore you. Rep. Emerson for a question on the amendment.
All right, thank you. Just Rep. Bayham, or someone touched on it a little bit. So I think in committee, we talked about this a little, and the fiscal note was around $1 million for the entirety of it, so diapers and feminine products. So I think just rough estimation on this, maybe $500,000.
Maybe a little more, because the cost of diapers was just dramatically more because of the higher use of them.
Sure,
but it's not very high.
But under $1 million.
Yeah, and for someone month to month on a low wage, this actually does make a difference.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, members, no further questions or any objections to the adoption of the amendment?
Colleagues, it's pretty hard to object to the diaper thing. I voted for it when it came through, but I remain committed to what we were trying to do with amendments and going to handle it all, but I certainly appreciate, voting your conscience. Thanks.
Would you like to close, Rep. Landry, on your amendment?
I'd just like to point out that 5 children.
Okay, members, Representative Mandy Landry has offered up a set of amendments which Representative Wright has objected to. All those in favor of the amendment vote yea. All opposed vote nay. Madam Clerk, please open machines. Members, vote your machines. Mandy Landry, yea. Members, vote your... Guyman, nay. Jackson, yea. Members, you're voting. Chenevert, yea. The clerk will close the machine. We have 60 yeas, 40 nays, and the amendment passes. Next amendment, Madam Clerk.
Next set of amendments are offered by Representative Emerson, set number 149, a one-page set of amendments.
Rep. Emerson, on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the same amendment I put on House Bill 8 on the digital goods piece, just attaching into the passage of House Bill 1, the reduction in personal income tax.
Rep. Willard has a question on the amendment.
Hey, Chairwoman Emerson, I was trying to pull it up. What is this amendment doing?
The same one I did on House Bill 8 on Representative Brass's bill. It was just saying that it's contingent upon the passage of House Bill 1.
All right, thank you.
Okay, members, Representative Emerson has offered up an amendment. Are there any objections to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing no objection, the amendment is adopted. I think that's the last set of amendments back on the bill. Rep. Marcel for a question on the bill.
What, on the question, on the bill? Okay, thank you. Representative Wright. Or this bill now is .4?
Yes.
It's .4. Now, were you here when we passed the .45? Weren't you here?
I was.
Okay, it was a pretty tough time, wasn't it?
There.
It was a...
Oh, some people thought it was tougher than maybe it was, but okay, if you say so.
And if I recall correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, when we passed the .45, we were in a deficit. Is that correct?
That was, the .45 was a temporary fix to a deficit.
And the word you used is very interesting. Did you just say temporary?
It wasn't, that's right.
It's temporary. Okay, so did we tell the people of Louisiana that this would be a temporary tax and it would fall off in July?
Well, that's an interesting word that you use because you say, didn't we? And I can't agree with that. I did not say to the public, hey, I want you to use this temporary sales tax for 5 years because I didn't vote for it. And I don't think a lot of people in here did. Now, granted, I know some people are a little concerned that they think we collectively did, but this governor wasn't here. Most of the legislators weren't here. So that was a choice.
But you and I were here, right? You and I were here.
But I didn't vote for it. That's what I'm saying. I mean, a lot of people who were there at the time didn't vote for it. So certainly that is not a promise.
So let's, okay. So
Fair?
if that's fair. So if you say you didn't vote for the .45 then, but you're willing to vote for the .4 now. Is that accurate?
Yeah, except.
So is this a new tax?
No, here's what's really accurate about it is it's part of a bigger plan. And so we have a choice now. We can take a tax that is a little more effective, easier, people have choices, or we can reduce it in other areas, and that's what we're doing. So if you give me a choice, if I would have had a choice like this 5 or 6 years ago, I might have voted for it, but not in this case.
So you don't call being in a deficit in a hole that we were in when we came in and we voted, well, the majority of us voted for the .45, a choice. So you had a choice then and you voted against it.
I don't call it much of a choice. When I'm told that if I don't vote for it, then we're going to lose LSU football, which had zero basis in reality.
Members,
and a whole
Rep.
lot of
Marcel,
other things.
I'm going to ask that you please keep the questions on this bill, not what happened years ago, and no, just directly on this bill, please.
Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, we're talking about the .45 that expires in
Marcel,
July.
we're not going to go back and forth. This bill is a 4.4, and we're going to ask questions about this bill. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Representative Wright, let me ask you this. Is this a new tax?
No, I don't think it's a new tax, no.
You don't think it's new?
We're continuing on. That's the way I see it. We're just going to take something. But, you know, I think the problem is, again, people who are against something like this, they're not going to look at the whole package. Unfortunately, we can't do it all in one bill. So it'll ultimately be a tax cut. We'll get a little better picture of the numbers once we know where everything is. But
And Representative Wright, I'm not necessarily against anything. I'm just asking, you know, because I'm getting emails and my constituents want to know, and I'm sure you got a lot of emails too, what we're voting on and whether or not we're repealing something that we shouldn't be, or whether we are voting for a new tax. And I'm just trying to get clarity from you because you're the author of the bill. Is that fair?
yes, ma'am, it is.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, so you're supporting the .40, correct?
I'm supporting the concept of us continuing with the sales tax at .40. I mean, we can get into semantics about this, that, or the other, but that's what I'm supporting.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Rep. Newell for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Wright, thank you. I have been trying to follow this bill along with this 8-page set of amendments you have, and just trying to get an understanding as to what we're exempting and what we're keeping. So a lot of things jumped out at me, but thankfully Rep. Landry took care of one of my issues. Another concern is what is this bill going to do with specialty items around Mardi Gras specialty items? Because would the sales tax be exempted on that? And what would be included in that? Would the purchase of floats be taxed? And certain groups have a specialty item that they have to buy. Some groups have items that are donated and they decorate to make them specialty, but in the cases of Zulu, they have to buy coconuts and then resell those coconuts. So would the sale of those specialty items no longer be exempt?
So, okay, so the list of retained exemptions, okay? Which
So we're retaining it?
Well, I'm going to try to answer your question.
Yes.
I've been on a float maybe twice in my life.
You can ride with us. Me and my daddy got a float.
All right, fair enough. That's good. I like that.
But you got to buy coconuts, but we want the tax exempt.
I thought I was told by someone who does a lot of Mardi Gras that actually it's not exempt anymore if you're buying beads and things like that. But you can picture why in Louisiana, especially New Orleans, that would be a big deal. But what I'm trying to get to ultimately is if you want to see the list, I highly suggest in the digest, page 2 of 13.
That's where I was. I was just trying to follow along with these amendments and making sure that certain things that were exempt or weren't exempt, if they were changed by this set of amendments.
No, they're not changed. There's very few things that were changed. From the amendments perspective, it only applies to like 2 or 3 things. A lot of it's definitions and technical stuff.
So did we change the tax exemption for transient housing?
Not in the amendments today, no, or in committee.
Okay, so people that offer nightly accommodations for our homeless population, they would be exempt from those taxes. And those taxes would not be passed along to the transit guests.
Some of the non-for-profit exemptions.
Okay.
Yeah, they're good, yeah.
Okay, and nonprofit purchases, are those are still allowed? They still get those tax exemptions? Particularly for since we're in November, a lot of us have toy drives coming up. So with the toy donations and cash donations from and to nonprofits.
Yeah, I know it can get a little tricky on it, but that's my understanding, yes. I'm looking
That those
to see
stay
if I
in
can
place.
find something here. Unfortunately, it's not so easy to just say this whole category.
Exactly.
It's good, because we had some conversation about it in ways. Okay, stand corrected. I apologize. On the repeal list, which is, hold on one second, let me get to it here.
The repeal list that starts on 128 in the digest?
I got the wrong one, sorry about that. Page 18, starting in page 8 of 13. So yes, the repealed are, hold on one second. Where's the number there? So 22 and 28. So 22 is on page 9. 28 is on page 10 near the top. And so these are the repealed exemptions or exclusions. Exclusions, exemptions, rebates, and credits.
So we will be repealing the tax exemption for transit housing.
No, I think the two that I mentioned, there was something about transient housing.
Because that was, the transient housing was in one of those paragraphs with the line through it.
Yeah, hold on one second. So the two that I pointed out to you.
And again, we on page 8, you say, and 9? Because I've been...
Page 9 of 13. This is in the digest, okay? I'm looking at the digest. It's a lot easier to get to information, the digest. So I'm not looking at the bill per se. So you're looking at 22, donation of toys. And then on the next page, page 10, you have specialty Mardi Gras items purchased or sold by certain organizations.
So those items, the tax exempt on those items are being repealed.
I think I'd like to get a sense of the definition.
And that's why I was asking you, because I want to know what is considered specialty. Would the purchase of a float be specialty?
All right, transient, page 86 of the bill. It's put back in, that was put in. So it's, some things have been relocated to different sections. That makes some of the complication as well. But the transient part is, housing is definitely still in.
So we're keeping the exemption for the transient housing, so that tax won't be passed along to the nonprofit agency, nor would it be passed on to the transient guest.
Absolutely. And look, you have my word. If you want to look this up further, it's complicated. I know. It's hard to keep up. Let's talk, and should we get out of here, I will work on it and get some answers to some
Members,
of
can y'all please hold the conversations down? It's getting hard to hear.
Yeah, because I was about to ask you to speak up because I couldn't hear you. So the transient was moved, and I think that's what caused me some confusion with it. But again, with the, and I saw that the tax credit for international travelers, is that being exempted out? Will we no longer give that credit to international travelers? Will allow that rebate international travelers? Ms. Price, she coming up, she was right there.
So yeah, that is being eliminated. It timed out and it wasn't included. So I don't think that program was being used much, to be honest. The LA Tax Shopper program in the language, yeah.
Okay, so you said they're not using it.
Yeah, no, that's going to be gone.
Okay, and can you explain to me the antique airplanes? So if the tax on the airplanes, if it's held in a private collection and not in commercial use. So let's say I had enough money to own an antique plane and I loaned it to the Lakefront Airport to put on display. Would I have to pay a yearly tax on that plane because I'm the owner? It's not in commercial use, but it is an antique plane.
I wish I could tell you what the answer is. I don't know that. I don't know how that applies with antique things like that. That's a little.
I'm asking because that was on this repeal and exemption, and I want to know how that worked. Or who would be responsible for paying that tax? Would it still be the owner or the place who benefits from?
Part of the problem, we got hundreds of things that aren't being used, and unless you have somebody in your ear or calling you, or emailing you, and talking about it, a lot of us don't know half of this.
And that's why I was asking, because I figured somebody might have asked you these questions when you filed this bill. But it wasn't published that long ago, so I guess some people didn't notice that it was in there. And I have these questions because I do have a small airport in my district.
Yeah, we think the antique plane is actually an income tax credit, not a sales tax.
Okay, so that you no longer get that exemption has been repealed.
Steph said they'd have to look it up, but they're pretty sure it's applied to an income tax.
Okay. I had, and then I saw another one where we would have we were repealing the exemption of taxes on auto repairs made out of state. Are we exempting that because that program is not used, or would we now be requiring our citizens to pay taxes twice?
Can you tell me what that is, where you're talking about?
See, yours.
I mean, so you want us to?
No, I don't want you to do nothing. I'm asking, what is this going to?
Something out of state, then you want us to do something about it different when they live here?
I'm saying what's in this bill, and I'm trying to go to the digest because that's where I found it. But I think this is 138, appeals exclusions. In the bill, in the digest, it is on. Bear with me, I'm sorry. I think it's on page 141. No, that's not it. Okay, when I find it, I'll show it to you, because what it said was if you have a citizen that goes out of town they would have to pay taxes on repairs done out of state. That was what was on this list. And I was asking if we're taking away that tax credit or that tax exemption and would now be requiring our citizens to pay taxes on the service that they receive out of state. And how would that work?
My understanding, it's being repealed, but here's the thing, we're giving people a credit for.
Could you talk into the mic, because I can't hear you, please? Our colleagues are a little loud.
Again, that's something we can kind of dig a little deeper into, but I mean, essentially what you're talking about is repealing something, giving somebody a credit here for something there, or doing outside of Louisiana. And I think,
Okay, members, I just want y'all to know there's a lot of conversations going on out there. I'm going to ask that y'all use your inside voices. We have a lot of people for questions on the bill. and the members out of time. So I'm going to ask for an additional 5 minutes to allow the opportunity for additional members to ask questions. Rep. Newell?
Rep. Wright was in the middle of answering me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're repealing things that are a little gratuitous. So if somebody's getting something repaired out of state, right, in another state, then they should deal with that state. I'm not sure I understand why we should give them a credit or whatever the case may be.
But it seems like we're repealing the exemption of that tax. And to me, where it's located, it reads as though we would be charging them taxes on a service that was done out of state. I know you're running out of time. When I find it, I'll bring it to you and Ms. Pryor so that we can figure out how that works or what that would actually look like. And then I saw on this list again of the repeals of the receipts of coin-operated machines. So right now, are we exempting coin-operated machine owners from the taxes on the receipts?
Hold on a second.
And we're removing that tax? That exemption?
We're repealing any exemption to sales on a coin-operated machine, yes.
So if we're repealing that exemption on the receipts of coin-operated machines, we're going to start collecting those taxes now on those machines.
I mean, most of those machines are a company, right? And they own them all over the place. So you're saying we're not going to give you an exemption for paying sales tax on it.
But I'm not looking at from the lens of the company. I'm looking at it from the lens of the consumer. Because in my district, I have a lot of laundromats. So if those companies are now paying the taxes on those receipts, that's going to be passed along to the consumer. So whereas you were paying $6 a load to wash clothes, now you're paying $6.64 a load to wash clothes.
So, okay, go ahead, sorry.
And then if we gonna tax services too in another bill, would that be an additional tax? So would that cause that cost of that load of clothes to go up? I'm just trying to understand how this would look if we're gonna start taxing these receipts on these coin-operated.
Look, here, I'll tell you, you asked how it looked. This is how I would see it. I mean, if I walk into a store right now, across the counter, buy M&Ms, you name it, whatever, okay, and I gotta pay a sales tax, okay?
But at that vending machine downstairs.
I don't have to right now, so it should be even. That's the way I see it. There's nothing wrong with that. So the company that's got these machines is going to have to pay, we're saying you got to pay a sales tax. Now, how they charge it is different.
Exactly, because I don't see them.
It doesn't.
I don't see them eating that charge. I see them passing it along, because if you've been getting $2 for this pack of M&Ms, you want to continue to get $2, but now we asking you to give us part of that $2. We need to figure out to make it up.
If I own the store that sells M&Ms and I'm having to charge extra to pay a tax, I don't want that. You talk about winners and losers. We're giving winners to people who own coin-operated machines versus the person who's got the normal store. Like, so I guess what I'm saying is I disagree. I don't think it's as big a deal, but, you know, fair enough. I mean, it's an observation. I get you.
Yes, it is. And thank you so much for answering my questions.
Sure.
Rep. Wilford Carter for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, would it be fair to say that this bill, along with the whole package of bills on taxes this session, is looked at as one effort in order to shift taxes from one source to a sales tax source?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I'll say it differently, okay? I don't know that I completely agree with the way you put it, but look, it's a plan. It's the Louisiana Forward Plan, right? We know what that is.
Right.
And overall, there's 12 bills, and yes, we are trying to move into taxes that are more effective for the economy, for growth, you name it, okay? A lot of people want to get into just the number, 0.4 versus 0.5, 5 versus 6. It's really more about the specific taxes that are harmful or easier choice, you name it.
So we have to pass, this have to be passed in order for the other bills that be passed out of here to work. In other words, the income tax reduction, franchise tax, it's Article 7, that kind of stuff. House Bill 7, all that has to work as one. If this does not pass, then that would affect the bills that pass.
I think you're right, yeah.
Okay, now, so basically what we're doing, we're going from a base of corporate tax, franchise tax, and others to sales tax.
Leaning more into sales.
Because you feel, and others that have studied this feel, that this tax is fair to all citizens. Would you say, in your opinion, you feel like it's, why you think this tax is a better tax, this sales tax, when you didn't think about it? I understand you voted against the 4.5. So why this sales tax?
Well, there's a couple of reasons why. Okay, first off, with a sales tax, a person has a choice. Whether it could be a lower cost, a higher cost, nothing at all, substitute, you name it. There is a choice there, okay? With an income tax, there is no choice, honestly. I mean, there's a certain amount that's coming out, and then on top of that, it's a certain there's certain penalties based on income tax that almost like works against productive activity or growth, right? So, like, I remember coming here as a representative, and we get the per diems and all this stuff like that. It bumped me into a new tax bracket. Like, I didn't come here to win, but what I'm saying is, like, little bits will pop you over the top, and next thing you know, you got a lot more taxes to pay. So, ultimately, what we have seen, and I mean, I'm happy to share what I got, but the states that have the lower or flat taxes or zero income tax are a little more productive, if not a lot more productive.
So, if a person making $40,000 in your household, say a household in Louisiana making $40,000, they're going to pay I don't know what the income tax rate is, but based on what we passed, they probably pay 3% income tax or less. So that's what they're paying, probably paying twice that now. Now, in the sales tax, they're paying 4% of everything they buy. So if they got 4%, they got $40,000, they're paying 4%, which $1,500, $1,800 with this sales tax. Do you find this to be a more regressive tax to lower income people, working people that not making a whole lot of money? Now, a person making $300,000, $400,000, they buy what they want to buy, and they're not going to notice it. Do you think it impacts lower income people more, sales tax, than income tax?
I don't really agree with that. I never liked the concept of a regressive tax versus another. I think there's a productive tax, there's a tax that pays for bills. My understanding is this concept of regressive taxation started back in the 20s, actually got ties to communism and Marx, and I don't care for it. So I don't buy it. Okay. I think everybody should pay a little fair share. That's the great part about sales. It's spread out, right? But we've got enough provisions to cover somebody who perhaps is poor and things like that to address that. So, I mean, I respect what you're saying. I just don't agree.
Okay, so on the exceptions in this bill, all right, this is a 142-page bill, so forgive me, and I don't know where it is, but I know it's in the bill. I don't remember where it is. But you had a lot of exceptions in sales tax in the past, like maybe 100 exceptions, exclusions, okay? Credits and exclusion, you may say. So this bill deleted all those, but retained about 17 or 18 of them. And they maintained the deletion of some 75 exclusion. Would you agree?
I'm not sure I'm following you, but a little bit, but I don't think I got enough to answer a question.
Well, maybe I should ask this way. Article 7 provided almost 100 exclusions of sales tax.
Members. Okay, the member's out of time. I'm going to ask for an additional 5 minutes. We still have 4 members in the queue for questions, without objection.
So, Mr. Chairman, all I'm saying is, at one point before we came to this session, the Constitution provided some 100 and some odd exclusion to sales tax. I might be wrong on the exact number, but it's pretty close to 100. Sure. And we did away with that in Article 7. So now this bill seeks to reestablish sales tax and retain some of the exclusions. About 17, which I can figure. They're saying exclusion for consumption for food and consume at home, okay? For home consumption. That exclusion's still there, and there's some 17 others. But then you have a deletion of some exclusions, some 75 of them. One of which is the sale of propane and gas for private residential use. So some of our citizens, do you agree? They have propane tanks, and they maintain propane tanks, and they buy propane. We buy it just to maybe barbecue, but some people buy it to live off. They heat up their homes with it.
For the record, propane's excluded.
It's still
You're not paying
excluded?
Sales tax on that. In fact, one of the amendments fixed the .45 portion of that. So
Okay, because I
we did a lot of work on this with.
okay, because I'm just reading the bill. So you said the amendment excluded the propane, included it into the exclusion.
Propane delivered, it's not getting taxed.
Sales by the senior citizen organization, that was excluded. That's still,
Agent you talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, that's taken care of.
that's still excluded.
No, yeah, they're not.
So I'm trying to figure out how many of these 75 deletion to exclusion in this bill that you restored. You had, how many exclusions do we have right now on the sales tax as we stand right here today? Is it 17 or 50 or how many are there?
It's, if you go look in the digest, so right now, page 2, 3, and 4, all right?
Yeah.
You got 58 things that are retained exclusion. And there are other parts that actually includes things like medical.
Right.
Can I get a Coke Zero? Thank you. Sorry.
So if I get, okay,
Yeah, there's a lot.
we got a lot still excluded. So if I add on to my house and I have a carpenter come, I don't have to pay sales tax to that carpenter labor.
One more time? Sorry.
At one point, we had a repair to a home, for example. And if you repair your home, you hire a contractor to go and repair your home. You pay for the material that you're going to repair at the lumber yard, you know. But the carpenter that charged you $20,000, $30,000 to add, is that excluded still?
That's part of HB 9, as I understand it. That's part of the services concept, so
Okay.
it's not in this bill.
Okay, so but right now in this bill, if we pass this bill, will I have to pay my carpenter sales tax? That's all I want to know. When I add on to my house in this bill.
Services is not part of this bill.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rep. Willard for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Wright, I know you told Rep. Marcel that this is not a new tax, correct? I guess from your perspective, you don't think it's a new tax?
I mean, the people are paying actually a little less than what they were paying the last 5 years, so you can call it. Thank you, sir. I mean, we can get into semantics all day long.
I'm not trying, I have pretty direct questions.
No, I got you. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, you asked if I characterize it a certain way. I don't even remember what I said back then. What I'm saying is, like, people were paying .45 temporary till the end of this year. After this, it goes down a little bit, not to mention the exclusions and such. I think people are paying less sales tax after this than others. Is that?
Yeah, it's a little loud in here.
That is.
So what happens next year with this tax if we don't do anything?
It goes away. The .45 would go away.
So the .45 is set to expire next year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How much money does that generate? How much revenue does the .45 generate annually?
I've heard different things.
About $500 million?
Say that's $500,000 or half a billion?
$500 million.
I think that's about right. That's close. That's a good ballpark. Let's say that.
So if we were to let this tax expire as it's supposed to next year, a good chunk of the people of Louisiana would have some extra money in their pocket. And now we're reducing it, right? So now this proposal is to make that tax permanent, right?
So
but reduce it to 0.4 instead of 0.45?
Be 0.4, that's right.
So we're making the 0.45 that was supposed to be temporary permanent, but reducing it to 0.4. What,
We also just made it permanent, a decrease in income tax. I mean, I think this idea of trying to like focus on one bill versus the whole plan is a mistake. They'll have more money in their pocket just from an income tax change. So like,
well,
we could drill down on one bill, but we all know this is a bigger picture. It's part of a bigger plan, and I don't know how else to explain that.
no, I would agree with you, Chairman, and I've been trying to approach everything this session as though it's one bill, you know, the whole package. Would you agree, though, that the changes in the personal income tax bill give larger benefits, larger breaks to wealthier people in Louisiana, dollar value-wise?
No, I don't agree to that. I mean,
So the more you pay in taxes, the more you save from that plan, is that correct?
you're suggesting that percentage. I mean,
No.
Wait, listen. If you look at traditionally who's paying income tax
Mhm.
and at the levels, I mean, I've seen some really crazy stats where like the top 10% are paying 50% of the bill in the state. So I don't know how you would suggest that they're paying, I mean, it only favors the wealthy. Because
They also have the top percent of wealth in the state, though. So we can move on.
At any point in time, I mean, I'm sorry, I've just seen your side, God bless you, make these arguments for decades, and I totally disagree. That person who's wealthy today can be poor the next day. It's not a stagnant thing, it's a full pie. The better idea is to broaden the pie. And so to go demonize the 10% who pay 50% of the taxes in the state and say it's not a good tax, it's just not a good plan. And I'm never going to agree to that. And I don't see how people think that's good for us in this state. We've had people leave this state for 20 years. We've lost congressional districts. I can't tell you how many people I've heard about businesses that won't come here because they don't want this crazy 7.5 corporate income tax because we want to be like Huey Long and go after Standard Oil. Sorry, I'm ranting, Grant.
Yeah.
This isn't working for us. This is not working for us in any kind of way. So granted, there may be parts of this plan that don't work as intended, or some people might not like, but it is a plan. And it's the first one we've seen in a long time. That's why I'm supporting it. And that's why I think this bill contributes to make it better.
Okay, so to get back on the bill, the point where in committee we went from 0.45 to 0.40. Do you recall how much revenue was impacted by that change?
I think it was suggested that it was 50 million.
Yeah, and the fiscal note, the revised fiscal note indicates it's 50 million. So my understanding is the package ultimately calls for about $100 million deficit, correct? This whole tax package the governor's pushing would result in about $100 million deficit?
I think it's something like, but here's the thing, that's an estimate. We don't really know until we work through this the next year or so, but that's the estimate, yeah.
Yeah, so 100 is the estimate. I agree, it's probably more of a guesstimate. So when you add 50 million on top of that, how do we make that up? The extra 50 million from this tax?
I'm not the architect of the full plan. There's 12 bills at least that we're working on with the Senate on. I think when we get a little closer, we'll have a clearer picture on how to address that. I can't say that I know what that's going to look like because it's going to be what this whole body and that whole body ends up agreeing on.
Is it possible that we do more spending cuts?
I have no doubt at some point we'll have to, perhaps, maybe not, I don't know.
Is it possible that we increase the flat rate on the personal income tax?
Members, I'm going to ask again, and my friends from the Senate, to please hold your conversations down. We're having a debate on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Secretary Nelson indicated that could be one of the options, increasing the flat rate on the personal income tax bill. Just, we did hear that in committee. So moving on to the actual bill, some of these exemptions are being consolidated at the state and local level, correct?
That's right.
Okay, my question is, are any of those consolidated exemptions currently taxed by locals?
Wait, can you say that again?
Okay, so part of this bill repeals exemptions.
Right.
And part of it aligns the state and local base.
Right.
Meaning if the state taxes, local taxes, tax. If state doesn't, locals don't. What I want to know,
Yeah.
as far as the consolidation of exemptions, are any of those exemptions that are being consolidated currently taxed by locals? Because this would force an exemption.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're
Do
trying
you
to-
understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, no, we're trying to streamline, right? There's been some exemptions that we've had to deal with in a different way. MME is a perfect example. There was an attempt to streamline it, consolidate it, right? We talked about prescription drugs, yeah. So there's some of that, but I'm having trouble understanding where you're going.
Well, where I'm going with it is the impact to locals. So if the locals are taxing things right now, and then this bill passes and it says you have a state exemption as well as a local exemption, that would mean the locals can no longer tax it, which
right.
eats into their revenue source. So I just wanted to know if some of the consolidated exemptions are currently being taxed by locals.
Yeah,
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some. We pointed out some of the bigger ones, right? I have no doubt there will be some, right? But I'm not sure I understand the question or what can I tell you that would
All right, so
make this better? Like where we're going?
I'll say this and then I'll move on to my final point. In this bill, we're consolidating a state exemption, a state sales tax exemption, and state local exemptions. Some of those consolidated exemptions are currently taxed by locals. By forcing an exemption on locals, you're taking money out of their pockets because that's something that they currently tax. You understand that?
I understand that.
Okay.
I think my question though is, yeah, that is part of the goal, is to streamline that and address some of these taxes that have been harmful, right? That aren't productive. I mean, go talk to all the small businesses that have been dealing with this. I mean, you know that personally. I mean, it's good. That's part of the plan. Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the small business. In committee yesterday, we talked about the vendor's compensation credit. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Did the amendment set that we adopted put that credit back in?
No.
Okay. So without that credit, isn't that kind of a tax increase on businesses? Because they currently get to retain a portion of that sales tax.
And the reason why some of that credit's there is because whatever reason, unlike 48 other states in the country, don't want to do some sort of centralized version. So, I mean, no, there's no amendment in there, and there's ways to fix it. Yeah, but it's
But
not
is
in
this
here.
package calling for a centralized sales collection system?
No.
Okay. So those small business will have to do the same amount of work, but they lose the credit that they've been getting.
Perhaps.
Okay. So that'll be a tax increase on businesses.
I wouldn't call it that, no.
Thank you, Chairman Wright.
You're welcome, bro.
Okay, members, the member's out of time. I'm going to ask for an additional 5 minutes. If there's any objections? Are you objecting, Rep. Willard? You're done, okay. Hearing no objections, the member has an additional 5 minutes. I have 2 questions left in the queue. Rep. Lyons for a question.
I'm over here, my friend.
How you doing, Rep.
Pretty
Lyons?
good, Vice Chair. A couple questions. The first one is, I noticed we had a line item in here for the individuals or exemption for organizations that provide training for the blind. Has that particular exemption been retained and the number of retained, or is it still active in this bill?
Can you tell me where you see that?
Wow. I can get to it in a second. Wait a minute. Let me get it for you. Let's see. It's on number 51. I think it's in the digest. For sales and purchases by certain organizations that provide training for blind persons.
The amendment failed. We think that amendment failed. Are you sure? So
It was on line number 51 of the digest. I know several of the actual line items here were retained in other amendments maybe. But I wanted to make sure that this one was still there. I want to know why it was not retained if it hadn't been.
okay, so you're talking about the digest, the engrossed digest?
Yes.
Okay. And what page were we talking about?
I don't know what page, but it's number 51.
I just looked at the, that's not one I see. The 51 on this page is purchases of fishing vessels, supplies, fuels, lubricants, and repairs.
Okay, you might want to ask Ms. Pryor where it's at, because she would probably have it.
But it's not the same, but no, we're not talking about the same one, though. I mean, she says it's being repealed, obviously, but my point is that it's not, that's not 51.
So it is being repealed.
Yeah, as I understand it, right.
Okay, and
It was an attempt to amend it, and it failed.
Attempt to amend that one failed. That was an attempted to do that one. So
committee.
basically, all right. The next one that I'm asking about is hurricane preparedness sales. The sales tax holiday for hurricane preparedness. Is that one also being repealed?
Is that where are we?
Well, that was number 69. So maybe you have a different one than I have that may be updated. But this was the current one that's listed there.
Yeah, it's repealed. Yes, it's being repealed.
So we're basically, and I'm asking that question because do you know if these services were particularly being used right now at any capacity?
There are a lot that have not been used in a long time. Whether it applies to either of those two, I can't answer, but it was a lot. In fact, a lot of things are being moved because nobody's taking advantage of them. So it's
well,
cleaning
I'm
it
asking
up.
that question because I don't know if you use software to do your taxes or not, but any individual who uses any software to do Louisiana tax returns, there's a moment there that they ask you if you want any exemptions or any credits that you may be eligible for. And you click on that, it has a host of hundreds of exemptions that are there. And some of them may or may not be used exclusively, but to some degree they were there for citizens of this state to actually benefit from whatever donations they make, whatever services they give to, or whatever services that they provide information or resources to. And those are there. Now, the hurricane preparedness is a real big deal for this state. For individuals who want to go and shop every year to prepare themselves for hurricane season, which is big, it's a holiday that they're given so they can buy all those particular things that they need for hurricanes and have a tax break on those particulars. So now we were taking that away from them. Do you feel like that's really something that we should be taking away from the citizens?
I mean, what I feel really doesn't matter, sir, as I understand. I mean, it went through committee. There was no amendments to change that out that I'm aware of. It's certainly part of a process, and we can consider those types of things if you want to do that. But I mean, it's like, I mean, we know how many of these are there, whether or not one or another. They all have a great answer. They all have good motivations. I mean, but that's part of the problem. It's how we got here because we have this much. So, you know, whether or not I feel one way or another, I don't think it matters.
Okay, well, I understand that piece. So let's get away from where you feel. Let's deal with the factual pieces. So I'm going to bring an amendment right now to retain the hurricane preparedness sales tax. Will you oppose that amendment to do that?
I'm not, listen, you can propose the amendment and get a vote, okay? I'm objecting to the idea of bringing in stuff off the floor. I'll work on it in Globo and how it affects everything, but at the moment.
In Globo, this is the moment now. I want to retain
for you,
this.
but not for me. I'm just not going to agree. I'm sorry. I mean, we went through committee and nobody brought that up. I mean, we can work on that
But
outside, but I don't know the
committee.
details.
I wasn't in committee, so I wasn't serving that committee. So I'm saying now in order for me to bring an amendment, to have a vote, that means you would be objecting to that amendment. So now, as we talking now, you would object to that amendment right now.
I would object to amendments like that in this way right
You
now.
object to the amendment to give the citizens of this state an opportunity to have a tax holiday for hurricane preparedness.
Nah, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in this manner.
I'm saying I'm going to prepare that amendment right now and bring it here.
Oh, well, trust me, I understand what you're saying. I'm saying that this is not the way to deal with all these objections. We have a committee that went through. We've got more of a process. I don't know all the details. There's a lot of people that have been working on this, so that's why I'm not interested in
Rep.
saying.
Lyons and Rep. Wright, I'm going to ask that we stay directly on the bill, and members, the member is out of time. I'm going to ask for an additional 2 minutes, 2 minutes, without objection. Rep.
Mr.
Lyons?
Speaker, this is directly on the bill.
Questions on the bill?
I'm asking a question on
Okay,
the bill.
we have one more member with a question.
Okay, I'm asking a question on the bill, and the question was if this is not being, if it's being retained, not being retained, I will provide an amendment to actually have it retained. Will you object to the amendment to having it retained? That's all I'm asking.
I've
Yes or
said
no?
from the start that I've objected to other amendments beyond what we submitted. It doesn't mean that's the end, though, and you know that. I mean, we've done this for years, right?
Get it.
So the idea of trying to deal with some of these details, I mean, we got hundreds. I think it's not fair to say that that is some objection to the Louisiana people and some low cost. Like, there's a process for this. It's very appropriate in this case, and so
this
I'm
is
going to
the
maintain
process.
that.
This is the process, sir. You provide a bill, you present it, we listen to it, we hear it, we provide objections or amendments, and you either object them or you accept the amendments. That's the process. There's no other way about that.
Some processes are better than others. You've seen that like I have over the years. And in this case, I'm not sure I can agree to doing that. Now, you want to talk after? We can talk through it because there's a lot of details to consider for that type of thing.
We're going to do it now.
I'm not going to be pinned to say I'm against hurricane prep. I mean, I'm just not going to happen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Rep. Taylor for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have some succinct questions that I'd like to ask. This bill it's 142 pages, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the amendments that were proposed by you, that's another 8 pages, is that correct?
That's about right. Yep.
And
Now,
there
some
was
of that, a lot of that is like 3 pages of just deleted text. So keep that in mind. But go ahead.
Okay, and then there was another amendment that was approved, I don't know how many pages that is.
That was less than a page, right?
Okay. Is it your opinion that more questions, there are so many questions that are not answered with reference to this bill? Do you feel that with clarity that we shouldn't wait to approve this bill, that it should be pulled?
No, ma'am, I don't agree with that. I mean, look, the appropriate committee has been working on this for a long time. The committee submitted it to the floor for a vote. I agree with what they did. We've been dealing with this for 10 to 20 years in various shapes and forms, so I think that's one of the reasons why this never happens, because we get to the edge of the cliff and we never pull the trigger, so
Weren't there many questions that you could not answer as to whether certain things with reference to goodwill and other things were not still in the bill? Weren't there a lot of questions that you couldn't answer on the floor today?
Well, I guess it depends on how people see it that way. I mean, there's a lot of details to deal with, so I can't recall everything, and I don't think anybody in this place could do it. That's why we rely on staff.
But you're the person at the podium who's trying to get it passed, so you should be the person that's able to answer the questions, I would tend to think.
Well, that's how you think. I wouldn't hold some people to that. I mean, some of these are a lot more complicated than just standing up here and knowing everything.
So with reference to the bill, we should all vote on this bill, whether we still have questions or not, and whether you've been able to answer the question that were proposed today or not.
That's your choice, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay, so you feel it's in the best interest with many unanswered questions with reference to goodwill, the diaper question was answered, and different things that we may think are very important that were just brought out today. You feel we should go forward with this bill irrespective of all the dissension, all the questions, all the unanswered questions today. We should
Have you
just
talked
go
to
forward
Louisiana
in order.
Department of Revenue about this bill and all the details involved, or you
I'm
just waited
asking
until we
you
got
the
it?
I'm
Yeah, no,
asking
fair
you the
enough. But here's
question.
the point. This has been worked on
I'm
for
asking
6
you the
months by
question.
full department. And so the idea that I'm going to know everything, I don't think that's fair.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, there's no more questions on the bill. We do have an amendment, Madam Clerk, on the amendment.
Next set of amendments are offered by Representative Bamberg. That's one-page set of amendments, set number 161.
Rep. Bamberg on your amendment.
Members, this is just a simple amendment that will add back the exclusions for purchase of Bibles, songbooks, or literature used for religious instruction classes. I'll take any questions.
Rep. Willard for a question on the amendment. Members, I'm going to ask that you please hold it down.
Which ones are you putting back in?
Bibles, songbooks, literature used for religious instruction.
Any, just those? That's the only ones you're putting back in?
That's correct.
Why not anything else?
Because that's the ones I chose to put back in there.
Got it. Thank you.
Any further questions on the amendment? Any objections to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing no objections? Rep. Wright, are you objecting?
Yeah, I mean,
Wright, are you
look,
objection?
I explained from the beginning I was going to have a certain focus on this. I mean, diapers, obviously. How can you be against diapers? How can you be against Bibles and things like that? We had a process, so I'm going to object to it. But
Okay. Rep. Bamberg, would you like to close on your amendment? Would you like to close on your amendment?
Yep, I just asked you to vote your conscience.
Okay, members, Rep. Bamberg has offered up a set of amendments which Representative Wright has objected to. All those in favor of the amendment vote yea. All those opposed vote nay. Madam Clerk, please open machines. Members, vote your machines. Members, vote your machines. Selders, yea. Members that are voting? Members that are voting? Boye, nay. McFarland, yea. Egan, nay. Guyman, nay. Fisher, yea. Miller, yea. All right, the clerk will close the machine. We have 57 yeas and 40 nays, and the amendment passes. There's no amendments, Rep. Lyons. Members, whenever we have bills coming up, if you don't mind working on amendments a little bit ahead of schedule, would help. Members, I just want you to know we're waiting on a set of amendments that are being drafted, just to let you know what's going on. Rep. Hebert, do you have a question on the bill? You just bumped it. Okay, thank you. Just so y'all know, we're out of time. We're waiting on this amendment. They're coming soon. No more questions. We're out of time. I don't want to start a whole other problem with questions. They're frustrated with me because well, I mean, like, I was fussing with. Is this the amendment? Members, if you can work your way back to your desk, we're going to take up this amendment now. You too, Queen Denise. Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Speaker and members, Representative Lyons offers up amendment set number 164.
Rep. Lyons on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members, I appreciate your patience as we go forward here. And this amendment just does the two things that I was talking about. Little do you know, some of you may know, Lighthouse from the Blind and different organizations like that train individuals who are blind. In my particular area and district where they are, they teach them to do things like make wooden things, other stuff that they do to help other agencies out that they can work with them with. They train them to do those things with all the impediments that they have in doing that particular case. Some agencies do ask for credit in those particular cases. The next one is, what's most important to me, is the holiday for hurricane preparedness, tax holiday. Where other people around the country or states are preparing for holidays and other stuff like that when the springtime comes, what we're doing in Louisiana, all over, we're preparing for the hurricanes. We're preparing for June 1st. So to have a holiday where individuals can go out and get prepared, whether they got to buy resources to take care of their property or their personal issues, whatever, to do that, we supply one holiday tax-free for that particular case. So all that we're doing here is for a lot of different reasons. But the people of Louisiana, we're not saying that we're going to take everything from you and tax you for everything that you do from here on out. That particular point is unbearable. So I'm asking that you retain those particular exemptions that are there for those who are using, not for the level that it's used. As I said before, when you all do your taxes, there's several things that's listed to you as a citizen of this state that you can be provided for if you meet the qualifications. Not a giveaway, but a benefit to the citizens here who will work hard and pay taxes here, not to be taxed again for it. So I'm asking you to support this amendment if you can. Mr. Representative Wright, here you are. Thank you.
Okay, members, are there any questions on the amendment? Or is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? Rep. Wright on your objection.
Yes, sir. Respect Representative Lyons. We've been friends for a while. This thing was eliminated by the legislature in 2016. I do not know how Representative Lyons voted at the time, but I think it's a perfect example of why all these exemptions that we have to deal with are better dealt with when the department's involved, the committee's involved, and stuff like that. So I respect the effort, but I object.
You have a right to close.
As I said, members, we always have a saying, things that doesn't mean anything to anybody, people don't worry to them about. If this exemption doesn't matter to you all, then it's something that's irrelevant. We shouldn't worry about retaining it. But the citizens have an opportunity to do it. Those who choose to do it can do it. So retain it and have it there. The amount of money that is there is not equal to anything that we're cutting out or taking and adding on to in taxes here. So at one point in time, just think about the citizens of this state and get this done. I really appreciate your support in this amendment. It's only going to retain an exemption if they choose to take it.
Rep.
Thank
Lyons,
you.
will you take any questions on closing?
No.
You waive? All right, he waives. Representative Lyons has offered up a set of amendments which Representative Wright has objected to. All those in favor of the amendment, vote yea. All opposed, vote nay. Madam Clerk, please open the machines. Members, vote your machines. Miller? Miller, yea. Morse. McFarland, nay. Bacala, nay. Cruz, nay. Carter, yea. Carpenter, yea. Selders, yea. Galley, nay. Members who are voting, clerk will close the machine. We have 30 yeas, 65 nays, and the amendment fails to pass. Back on the bill, you have a right to close on your bill.
All right, colleagues, look, we've been here a long time. I think we've got some more stuff to consider, so I will keep this quick. This is part of a plan, Louisiana Forward Plan. It's the best and the first plan we've seen actually in decades. I think it would be good for all of our residents, but more importantly, or just as importantly, economic growth, jobs, you name it, okay? There's a lot of questions to ask. It's complicated, but I think the committee did a good job. I think the plan is good. I'm sure we can work on things between here and the other side, but I'd appreciate your support. Thank you.
Rep. Willard, why do you rise?
I request a lockout.
Will 20 members join Rep. Willard in a lockout? Madam Clerk, open the machines. Vote your machines, members. Clerk will close the machine. The clerk will close the machine. The lockout is obvious. Quorum call, members, vote your machines. Open, members, vote your machine. Miller. Boyer. Bacala. Selders. Members, vote your machines. Members, vote your machines. Members, are you voting? The clerk will close the machine. We have 94 members present in a quorum. All right, Representative Wright moves final passage of the bills. May you favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. Madam Clerk, please open machines. Members, vote your machines. Members, vote your machines. Davis is unlocked. Davis is a nay. Members, vote your machines. Members, Boyer, yea. Members, vote your machine. Members, vote your machine. Miller, yea. Clerk will close the machine. 71 yeas, 23 nays, and the bill finally passes. Rep. Wright moves to adopt the title. Moves to receive the voice for the bill finally passes. That motion on the table without objection, so ordered.